So we're just doing a quick mic test and audio check as far as YouTube goes. One correction as far as processes, you are allowed to just state city of residence. You no longer have to state address. I was telling everyone, state your name and address. So I just wanted to clarify that. And I am super echoey. I don't know.
Welcome, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming. We don't ever get people here. When we get the positive ones, that's fun too.
As I said, I wasn't at the last meeting, so I did not get informed it was my turn to bring donuts, so the lack of snacks is on me.
I'm not hearing it, but my test run ran okay. Let me,
I don't have my phone to check. Does anybody have YouTube on their phone?
let me check.
To check to see if it's broadcasting, if you have YouTube on your phone.
Let me see our very well.
Dana's got it. Dana's going to check on her.
City of
computer.
Milton Wa. Planning, commissioning, yeah, one
showing,
person
but
watching.
It's
I'm
the audio
watching.
that we've been having issues with.
It's purple. No, we're here.
We're there.
Yep, I
Yeah,
see
but do
me.
you hear anything?
Oh, can we hear us?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the
we've
issue.
been missing audio the last 2 meetings.
My 2 test runs were fine, but I can't tell.
It's purple. No, we're here.
Okay.
Okay.
Whoop, whoop.
Bit of a
Yay.
lag.
All right.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you everyone for your patience. It is 6:03. I call this meeting to order. We'll start with the flag salute.
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and then getting into roll call. Commissioner Boyle is not present, and if I remember correctly, he notified us he would be out. All right, Commissioner Whalen,
Here.
Commissioner Sweat, also not present.
He called in sick today.
Okay. Commissioner Johnson,
Present.
Commissioner Zaro also called in, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Vice Chair Oler,
Present.
and I am Chair Elliott. We are a slim crew today, but we do have enough.
Do we make a motion to excuse?
Yes,
I
you're
move
free.
to excuse Commissioners Boyle, Sweat, and Zarrow from tonight's meeting.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Who seconded?
Vice Chair.
Thank you.
All right, any additions, deletions, or corrections to tonight's agenda? Okay, moving into citizen participation. Thank you for all that are present here today. I'm very excited. This is, I think, this is definitely the largest crowd I've ever had for this group. And again, just please pardon me if I misstep at all, but we will all work together. I do have the speaker sign-in sheet, so I'm just going to roll down the list from 1 through 10. First on the list is John Hutton. You're free to approach the podium.
Thank you very much. Good evening. And first of all, thank you for your service to our community. I was a planning commissioner in a small town in California, and I served on the Milton Park Board. I've been a resident of Milton for over 32 years. Love it here. So appreciate you being here and letting us have the opportunity to speak. Basically, my understanding, and if I'm wrong on anything, please feel free to correct me. My understanding is that we're not compelled legally to make this move that's being proposed this evening with the lot adjustments. Is that correct? Before I misspeak?
Unfortunately, you're just giving a statement. It's not a discussion back and forth, so.
And I'll just stand here and assume that I'm correct.
Okay.
And then you can laugh at me later when I was wrong. I hope I'm not wrong. But I would just like you to please try and maintain the charm that we have in Milton. One of the real nice things about Milton is the small town nature of it. I work for a large city just to the north of here and have worked there for many, many years. I've seen what growth can do, and not that it's been all bad for Federal Way by any means, but some unchecked growth is not a great thing. And so I'd like to just please try to maintain as much as we can of the charm of Milton for as long as we possibly can. At some point, things may become out of our control, but if we're not forced to do things today, please, I just urge you to pump the brakes a little bit, and let's see what we need to do and give it as much thought as possible. I will endeavor to make myself more educated about this issue going forward, and I'll come back and speak again. So thank you again for your service, and thanks for the opportunity to talk.
Perfect, thank you. All right. So I apologize for not bringing that up to begin with, but also we're not allowed to respond at all. So next on the list is Randy Nelson.
My name's Randy Nelson. I've been a resident here for over 50 years. My commentary is primarily about the lot width adjustment. With the density increases that's come down from state mandates, and I understand that we need to comply with those, but to go beyond those that are required by the legislation, I don't find it necessary. Plus, and again, as the small town charm at 60 foot, it looks very commercialized, and so we would hold it to 75 foot for the width distance, which is still in compliance with the state. So, no to 60 foot.
Great, thank you. Next on the list, Bill Kent.
I haven't been to one of these meetings before, so I thought that was just an attendance sheet.
Oh,
You don't have to speak.
Just sit back down.
Anyways, but I would like to level set and make sure everybody understands the impact of going from 75 to 60. It's a little bit ambiguous to me, and I was hoping that I'd get a little more clarity out of this meeting.
Perfect. Yes, and that will be the intent later on. So thank you. Yes, and if I call your name, feel free to say no, thank you. Next on the list is Daniel Hodson. All righty. Marie DeBuck.
Hi, my name's Marie Buck, and I live in Milton for like 10 years, and I'm against the 60 and keeping it at 75. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next on the list is Paul, is it Schneider? All right, perfect.
Good evening. I want to echo about what everybody said. I've been a resident here of Milton for 36 years, and I don't understand why we're even looking at this. The state's already handcuffed us, and we all know what a great job that legislature does down there. So I don't think there's any reason to even move until we see how things work out with this state thing. And then obviously completely opposed to the 60, 75 foot thing. That's a bad way to do it. We're going to have people on top of each other, and it's not good. So, and I would just ask why are we even doing this? The town, we can't even keep up, first of all, with our infrastructure now. It's not good. I was telling some of the people, I came down a road to get here and almost ran over a kid on an electric bike, and he's going to get killed if he hits one of those potholes running at night, and the whole thing needs to be worked out. But let's back up a little bit, see how the state thing shakes out, and then we can do whatever we need, having a discussion at that time. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, next on the list is Myra Buck.
Hi, Rob.
My name's Myra Buck. I've been a citizen of Milton for 55 years,
And-
and I'm once again opposed to the 60, 75. We all know Milton can't even contain its own code, and we've already had other issues, a lot of growth that's been uncontrolled, and to just impose this upon the citizens in the way Milton kind of does what they do, it has to come to the very surface before we all react. I'd really appreciate if they just pump the brakes, as was said before, and we just slow down what's happening right now and just consider the citizens of Milton, long-term citizens of Milton have been here a very, very long time. So thank you.
Thank you. And that was Myra Buck, City of Milton resident. All right, next on the list, Avery Newberry.
I also just want to say that I second what everyone said. I don't believe it's sustainable. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next on the list is Ryan Lewis.
Hello, Ryan Lewis, Milton resident my whole life. I'd like to basically say everything they've already said. This is ridiculous. We don't need this. We don't have the infrastructure for it. We can't even get a new road down our road. We've been 50-some years without a road or a water line. We're gonna go ahead and go forward with this. Is ridiculous. I'd like to say these guys are doing a great job, and thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, and then last as far as to sign up, but I will also open it up one more round. Jackie Strader, also City of Milton resident.
Jackie Strader, Milton, Washington. Wow, with what everybody has said, I can cut my comments a lot shorter. So I'll get into then the data that everyone was given in the packet. In example 2, a lot of those lots, when it says no additional lots could be created, when I looked at, I realized they have the lot width, but they don't have the square footage. So they're not actually even legitimate examples, in my opinion, because in order to apply it with the concern, they should have both. And the concern is on my street, every single lot has the potential, but one, to be flagpoled. And it may just be my opinion, but flagpole lots as a design standard is not attractive, and it breaks up a neighborhood. And I just think to slip this in at the last month of this process and with no warning, I mean, the packet for the hearing, when I went through it, I didn't appear because the packet showed the edits were shown, but the 60-foot lot width, what didn't have a line through it. It didn't show the change. So I'm just skimming through it, looking for what's different, and I didn't catch that. So I guess it's my bad that I had to proofread 100 and whatever pages document to see where something was slipped in. And it probably was a mistake, but there's a lot of reasons why people are getting involved now at the last hours because we weren't told. So, and you can see people come here when they're told and they have opinions. And we've gone door to door. I have a petition that has 23 names on it with minimal time. If this continues beyond the Planning Commission, by the time it appears at council, there'll be even more people. Because I have yet to find one person that I've spoken with who said, yeah, I think it's a great idea. They all say, what? What will it do to the city? What about the small town? We like it the way it is. We like walking down the streets and having the trees and everything. What will happen to them? And there's been no discussion on it. It's just about reducing lot width. That's it. And then we'll work out the details later. Lot width should be the last thing. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I'll open it up as far as if there was anyone else that missed an opportunity to sign up or would like to make comment. Going once, going twice. All right, thank you. Again, I just want to say thank you to everyone that is attending and for speaking. I got into this because of the fact that I appreciate the process and when people follow the process. And so thank you again for just coming in and volunteering your time and for participating. It's great to see that. Next on our agenda is approval of minutes.
I'd
So
like
we've got,
to make a motion to,
Yeah.
to approve the minutes of November
That way, yeah.
6th, November 13th of 2024.
and I apologize, did you say that you motioned to approve both? Or-
Yes.
Okay,
I'll second it and then put forth an amendment to that.
okay,
And that is to make an amendment to say that what is before us to approve is not what was in the packet, that the minutes have been revised. So my amendment would be, and I guess we'd have to vote on the amendment and then vote on the main motion, which,
I'll withdraw my motion and start it again. Okay.
so we're
I would
talking
like to
about
make a
as
motion
emailed.
I would like to do a motion to accept the revised November 13th Planning Commission meetings from November 13th, 24, and the November 6th, 2024, as stated in the agenda.
second,
All right, we have a motion to approve the revised minutes that were emailed for November 6th and November 13th. That has been seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
aye.
Any opposed, or all those opposed? All right, motion passes unanimous. Next on the agenda, 6A, is a procedure refresher. So with that, I'll turn it over to staff.
Yes, since there is 2 items on for action tonight, we figured it would be good to make sure we're all on the same page because we don't do that a lot. So in the agenda item, it does say, it does outline it. Let me put it up here since I didn't print a lot. So it's just if everyone's in agreement that this is the process we're using tonight.
Yeah, and I'll start with, I did make one slight addition to this, and that's for item 2, for discussions and questions, is that we have at least one round robin so that everyone has at least one opportunity to speak.
So if it doesn't need a vote, it's just making sure everyone is in agreement.
Yeah. So is there any discussion on that?
I appreciate the clarity.
All right, perfect.
Thank you.
Email? All right, with that, we will proceed with agenda item 6B.
All right. So since we do have people in the audience tonight, a couple things. One, thank you. I haven't ever had to use the 3-minute timer, so now I know I can do that right. And we are going to start with the comprehensive plan since we have one of our consultants here. So basically what we're looking at is the changes to volume 2 for both the transportation and the capital facilities and utilities section. I am going to get off the screen so that Paul, and I'm blanking on your last name. Sharman's from Transpo has a small presentation.
Point of order.
Yes.
Is it possible to get a paper printout of this? When we got it via email, I didn't print it assuming we were going to get a,
I guess I was thinking with the new screens, we wouldn't need the printouts, but
Oh,
yes, in the
okay.
future, we can,
Okay.
I can do that as well.
thank you. You got it. Awesome.
Thank you.
I will note that it has changed slightly since that one. But, okay, hopefully everyone can hear me. Thanks for having me. My name is Paul Sharman. I'm with Transpo Group. We are the consultant responsible for working with City of Milton staff to update the comprehensive.
You could just get a little
closer.
Yeah.
Better. Okay, I'll hunch a little bit. That's all right. We're responsible for working with city staff to update the transportation element. That is one of the components of the comprehensive plan. So I'm here to specifically talk about that. Okay, so it's a quick presentation today, but just generally what I'm going to cover, going to talk about the transportation element guidelines, the reasons we do this, the state law that requires it, give kind of an overview of what a transportation element is, what are the steps that we go about when updating it, spend a little bit of time talking about the transportation system plans, you know, the plan for the pedestrians, for bicyclists, for vehicles, things like that. And then really spend a little bit of time with the capital project list, planning level cost estimates associated with building out that transportation infrastructure, and then give a quick look at the financial forecasts for what it would cost to build these things and look at the budget. I'm happy to be interrupted at any time, by the way, so please interrupt at any time. Okay, so transportation element guidelines, there are kind of a top-down set of requirements that cities are required to conform to. The reason we do this, to start with, is because of the Washington State Growth Management Act. That was passed back in 1990 and amended heavily last year. That requires cities and counties above a certain size to do this 20-year forecast planning every 9-10 years. And so that has a set of requirements that each of these plans need to contain. And so we have to make sure that our plan is consistent with that. And then kind of the next step down is the Puget Sound Regional Council. Oh, thank you. So I don't have to hunch. Hopefully that helps. Okay, perfect. Too much interference. And then, so in addition to kind of the state requirements, which are a little more broad, the Puget Sound Regional Council, they're the regional transportation planning organization. They direct a lot of the state and federal dollars down to kind of the regional level, and they allocate those funds. They also have their Vision 2050, which is their long-range transportation plan for the four-county area. And they have a set of policies and things that the city's plan then needs to be consistent with. In addition, we have to be consistent with Pierce County's plans, their countywide planning policies. And then, you know, down at the most local level, the transportation element is really kind of a reflection of the land use element. So the growth that we're talking about really drives transportation, where people live, where they work, how many people there are, where they travel to. That really drives kind of the transportation network and the needs. So kind of a quick overview of what this update process requires and what we set about doing here is first, you know, evaluating the existing transportation system, inventorying it, understanding what the traffic levels are, understanding where there are sidewalks, where there are bike lanes, and then taking that data and then doing a 20-year forecast. So we get the land use projections from the other land use consultant, and that kind of comes from the PSRC region. They allocate growth down to the city level. We take those and we develop forecasts using a traffic model that kind of says, you know, we've got a certain number of housing units going in here, jobs are estimated to be, you know, X% growth, and that translates to a certain percent increase in traffic. So we prepare an updated traffic model, and then given that model, we use that to define multimodal transportation improvement projects needed to accommodate that level of growth. We've also gone about updating the city's transportation policies, so kind of the guiding philosophies that drive kind of all the transportation decisions here. And then again, we put that together in kind of a cohesive document and bring that all here. So what are kind of the key changes with this update as compared to what was done last time? So kind of the main and overarching reason we do this is to update the plan year horizon. So the previous plan year horizon was 2035. We're now looking ahead 20 years to 2044. And with that comes an updated long-term project list and planning level costs. And I mentioned earlier the update to the state level guidance. That Growth Management Act has really required cities to focus on balancing investments among different modal priorities. So traditionally, a lot of the level of service standards and things have been focused on vehicular movements. And the state is now mandating that we start looking at active transportation, moving pedestrians and bicyclists, while improving vehicle movements and also really kind of emphasizing safety as part of that.
Quick point of information, plan horizon year, that refers to when it will be done. Is that correct?
So we're looking at a 20-year forecast. So this is given the 20-year projections of population and growth and job growth increase. So assuming that all of that happens over the next 20 years, this is kind of what the impacts on traffic are likely to be.
So the previous planning was 2015 to 2035. It's now 2024 to 2044.
And
Taking the count,
this-
okay.
And this is to kind of help us figure out and prioritize upcoming capital improvements and such, and figure out where we want to plan going forward. Okay. Please continue, sorry.
No, thank you. Okay, so one of the first things we look at when we are developing the transportation system is the functional classification. And so what this is functional classification is really the intended purpose of a roadway. I apologize, this map is a little small. There are 4 classifications within the city of Milton, starting at principal arterial. Those are basically the 2 state routes that travel through the city. Those are state-owned and operated facilities. The state sets the level of service standards, obviously is responsible for the capital projects associated with those, but are done in conjunction with the city. Minor arterials are those shown in kind of that yellowy orange color. Those are intended to serve kind of a higher level of traffic than kind of some of the other more minor roadways, those shown in purple. And again, those roads in purple are the collector arterials, and then any kind of road below that would be considered a local street. And so this hierarchy of functional classification kind of go from top down. Roads that are classified higher on the functional classification system are intended to be more focused on vehicle throughput with less of an emphasis on access, whereas a local street would have more access, more driveways, but would kind of serve vehicles at a lower speed, and there would be less vehicle throughput throughout the day. As part of the 2024 update, we're proposing a reclassification of Taylor to minor arterial. It was previously a collector arterial. I've been asked to kind of give a little information as to why. One, as many of you probably know, that roadway is serving more traffic today than it was back in 2015. Reclassifying it unlocks kind of two new things. One is potential grant funding. The functional classification of a roadway is directly related to the kinds of grant funds that it can receive. So reclassifying it higher opens up new grant funding opportunities to build out those capital improvements on that roadway. The other is when you reclassify a roadway, it is then subject to the design standards for that functional classification. So I'm not exactly sure the city's design standard difference between collector and minor arterial. I'm sure Dustin could explain that, but it likely has a different design standard that would be then required for that roadway.
Well,
Yes.
Yeah.
Are we able to ask a question in a
Yeah, I
point
think
of
now might be a
time?
good time to just quickly see if anyone's got any questions for what's been presented
Okay.
so far.
All right.
Yeah.
Because the change of Taylor to minor arterial, a lot of people don't really know that Yuma is also a minor arterial at 25 miles per hour, and Milton Way is a minor arterial at 35. So Taylor can stay at 25. What it gives us the ability to do is put in more traffic calming on Taylor, which we really couldn't do on a collector road. Is that correct?
Through the traffic calming studies and the program that we built out, the different classifications have different physical applications for managing speed. When we took a look at the overall traffic counts for roads throughout our city, Taylor echoed more of Yuma and Milton Way. Therefore, the physical applications that we apply to slow traffic down, we wanted those to be similar. We just, speed humps, as an example, is identified for collector arterials, and that wouldn't be a good fit on something that's holding 12,000 vehicles a day. There is other applications that we can use.
Any other questions or comments as far as with this map or what's been presented so far? Yes, Commissioner Whalen.
Just real briefly, my understanding is we have what they call a profile. It's like a cross-cut section of a road to see sidewalks, landscape strips, roadway widths. Will that be updated anytime soon?
Yes, that is in the process of being updated right now. We are working with GNO and Maple and our traffic consultant, Transpo, to help update those. The goal is 6 months that we'll have something to present to council. We'll look at the overall revisions. We'll be to current standards industry-wide. So that is a project that we are tackling in 2025. Yes.
Any others? Yes,
Just to
please
follow up
continue.
on that, will that come to the Planning Commission for any comment? I know it's not zoning, but
It is not currently scoped to come to Planning Commission.
All right. There's no more questions. Feel free to continue.
Thank you. Okay, so I mentioned earlier the kind of the state requirement and the Puget Sound Regional Council's guidance on building out pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure as well. So one of the new kind of system plan maps this go around identifies a planned pedestrian system map. So the map shown here shows facilities in dark blue. Those really kind of serve as the primary pedestrian network. That would essentially function as the spine of the network, where you would likely provide sidewalks on both sides of the street as a goal, would serve higher levels of pedestrian traffic, and would likely connect pedestrian generators more directly. The secondary on-street network is shown in light blue there. That would accommodate pedestrians kind of on lower volume roadways, would maybe require sidewalk only on one side of the street, and things like that. And then obviously supported by the interurban trail as well. So this is meant to be kind of a vision of a fully built out pedestrian network. Obviously this doesn't exist today like this, but this is kind of the long-term goal as of now for what a fully built out pedestrian system in Milton would look like.
And if it's okay, I noticed that 99 isn't colored at all with that having so many bus stops, which I know that comes later, and being so close to transit, and there's no crossing or anything like that on 99. Is there a reason that's left off this map, or is that covered somewhere else?
Good question. I'm trying to remember why 99 was not included. It probably should be.
Okay.
Or some way. That may be something to revisit. The idea is that this kind of gets updated over time, that this kind of vision, this is kind of the first cut. But as the city kind of goes about updating its multimodal level service program, which I believe it intends to do kind of in the near future, these maps will probably be revisited and updated as well. And that's probably something that goes along with that.
Yeah, I guess just, I've seen a lot of people dart across because there's bus stops along that. So that was the reason for that comment. Commissioner Whalen.
Two things. Could you raise our consultant's mic volume any?
When I raise it, we start getting feedback.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure why.
Okay. Lots of positive energy, I'm sure. But the question was in the future map updates, if you could make a distinction between, because we have varying what seems to be sidewalks. Sometimes they're on both sides, sometimes they're on one side. Sometimes it's just a slightly raised shoulder with pavement. So I think it would be really helpful to have a more specific picture of really what the facilities are in the future, if it's too late to make those changes now. Thank you.
Any other comments amongst the group? All right.
Yeah, actually, I'm
Vice
just
Chair
curious, the bicycle system map and the pedestrian system map, this is our vision. Does this make us eligible for grants to help build these things, possibly? Does anybody know?
I think that's the hope.
Okay.
Yeah.
Typically, you have to have an adopted comp plan with these elements in it to be eligible for grants, and these projects need to be identified in your TIP. that is submitted to the state. And these projects, there's several 99 projects on our TIP also. And I've been working with WashDOT and Sound Transit. If they elect to run Sound Transit down SR 99, which will be presented to their board over the next 2 months, the city would work with them to build out pedestrian facilities along 99.
And just, I guess, to add that, one of the things that is in the comp plan on the land use section is to do a sub-area plan for 99, the Highway 99 area. That in conjunction with, we don't actually even have a real good street plan for a highway, so we're working on that as well as we revise those street standards. So it's definitely an area that we have triggered in the comp plan, and we're already taking action on to try to get a better plan, especially with pedestrian safety.
Perfect. Feel free to continue.
Thank you. Okay, again, similar to the pedestrian system plan, we set about kind of a first cut at what a bicycle system map might look like. So that's shown in purple here. The darker purple, again, is those primary on-street facilities. Those are on higher volume roadways. They would likely require kind of dedicated bicycle facilities, like a bike lane or a buffered bike lane with a kind of a physical barrier, depending on the roadway. The lighter purple or pink facilities are again, the secondary streets, and those may be accommodated by shared roadways or sharrows where bicyclists and pedestrians share the right-of-way, or they could be dedicated facilities as well. They're likely on lower volume roadways, kind of a more comfortable biking experience that may not require dedicated facilities. And then again, supported by the off-street trail system as well. It serves kind of as a key piece of the bicycle network as well. And I mentioned multimodal level of service. These two maps are kind of envisioned to serve as kind of the foundation of that multimodal level service program when that kind of kicks into gear in the next year or two as the city sets about, updating its level of service standard to include pedestrians and bicyclists. And will likely be revisited at that time.
Great.
So, talking about capital projects, so we have set about, kind of doing the traffic forecasting, understanding where kind of the hot spots in traffic are, understanding, intersection improvements that are needed, corridor, roadway widening, things like that, that might be needed if this growth is realized over the next 20 years. And so we've set up a map here that kind of has a lot of projects. Some of them are simple, sidewalk installations, or maybe adding bike lanes, enhancing crossings, and other various improvements. Each of these comes with what we call like a planning level cost estimate. So kind of our best guess without doing too much actual design work about what these improvements might cost in today's dollars. And so the transportation element itself kind of gives a detailed description of each of these projects. I won't go through them kind of line by line here. But the light green projects are the non-motorized improvements. Those are dedicated to pedestrians and bicyclists. The blue projects are corridor improvements, and then the purple dots are intersection or crossing improvements. They may include installation of a new signal, updated signal timing, adding a turn lane, things of that variety.
And for those that are going through paper packets, page 75 and 77 are good references right now if you're trying to look close.
So kind of the big question is, what does this cost? So there are 29 projects identified in the transportation element at the moment. There are 5 intersection improvements, 2 kind of roadway expansions, and 22 non-motorized improvements, coming at a total price tag of about $70 million. Again, recent changes to that GMA require the inclusion of these kind of non-motorized improvements as part of the long-range transportation plan forecasts. So this is obviously a lot of money. And then what we do then is look at kind of the forecast transportation revenues over this same time period. So the top of this chart here compares expected capital revenues and project costs, and I have just realized that those are actually flipped. My apologies in the table. So we're not anticipating $70 million of revenue. That's cost. So those items are flipped. My apologies. I'll get that fixed. So essentially, we're projecting that the city will probably take in about $20 million of capital project revenue over this time period, which obviously leaves quite a shortfall to build out this entire network of projects. We also were required to look at the maintenance and operations revenues and costs, and we're showing approximately a balanced budget for the maintenance needs based on kind of the most recent forecasts. So I guess kind of the question is, what does this mean, the shortfall? Is this unusual? The answer is no. We're seeing a lot of cities with this new kind of active transportation, non-motorized requirement to have these sorts of projects kind of more robustly built out in the plan, are seeing a lot of estimated shortfalls. And what that realistically means is that a lot of these projects probably aren't built over this 20-year horizon without additional grant funding or partnering with neighboring agencies and things like that. They're kind of out of reach at the moment. But kind of the key important thing that Dustin touched on earlier is that the kind of the 6-year budget is assessed annually as part of that TIP, or Transportation Improvement Program, is done annually. So that's kind of where the balancing of budgets is done, and where the city plans to do its capital projects. This is, if you like, kind of a 20-year wish list. But having these things identified in here does make them eligible for certain grant funding. So it is important that we keep kind of those projects in here. And with that is the end of my presentation.
All right. Yeah, we'll start with Vice Chair Oler.
Yeah. Our revenues, what's the source of that right now?
Good question. I should stop sharing if I can figure out how to do this. There's a few sources. Did that stop? Yes.
Street fund, right?
Very quickly scan.
Street fund.
Uh-oh, I lost you. Oh, did you?
That was intentional.
You're intentional. Good.
Yeah.
Street fund.
Let's see. So revenues primarily come from 3 sources. The first is real estate excise taxes, or REIT. And then the second is impact fees. So when developers come in and build anything, they're required to pay transportation impact fees. And then the third one is grants. So state grants, TIB grants, things like that. And then the kind of the other funding source is vehicle gas tax and general funds. Those are within the city, basically exclusively dedicated to maintenance and operations.
Would Milton ever attempt to pass a bond for something like this? Do you think?
Again, it would depend on what I think they've done a bond. Isn't that what we have? Yeah. But those are at the council level, yes, that there are different funding options. And if they felt it was something that needed a bond, they would potentially put it up for that. So
Just curious. All
Yeah.
right.
All right, any other questions?
You coming
Going
around?
once, twice? Yeah.
Just
Commissioner
real
Whalen.
quick, what is tax increment financing?
What is it?
Yes. I see it on the bullet point list of budget shortfall being addressed by. I might have said something backwards. I meant to say tax increment financing.
That's right. So it's, to be completely honest, it's a little bit above my head. It is described in the plan, kind of what that is. I'm happy to kind of read the definition, but I'm not sure how helpful that is. That is one of the things it's included in there because it's a potential option, but my understanding that it comes from kind of using future revenues for local property taxes generated within the area. But I'm not unfortunately kind of a financial guru on these things. I wish I could give
I
you a
can
better
help a
answer on
little
that.
bit if you
Yeah,
want.
Sure, yeah, if you know.
Just because it was at a conference I was at. So the idea is that you would help invest in an area to grow with the idea, like you might
Like Field
you
of
might
Dreams.
put in like the utilities ahead of time with the idea that if the utilities are there, you're going to get businesses there with better property taxes that are going to go up that will then eventually fund it. So you're sort of spending with the idea that as the property tax raises, because you've helped businesses build and that you would come in. Some cities are using it. And there's specific you wouldn't just jump into that. But it's kind of a way of, a lot of times a city, certain cities will be like, okay, this is where it's supposed to be an industrial park, but nobody's able to upfront put in the infrastructure. So maybe the city will do something to put in the infrastructure, knowing that the taxes as they increase would be able to back pay it. So it's an option that some cities are using out there. So, and I believe we asked our finance director to help us come up with some of the ways that potentially a city could, not that we will.
Okay, so it's like Kevin Costner Field of Dreams. Okay.
If you build, yes, if you build it, they will come.
All right. Yes, Commissioner Johnson.
When I look at, when I look at the streets on the list, I'm going to harp on the one that I continue to see left off, and it's at 15th and Taylor. So even if we move Taylor to a minor arterial and we keep it at 25, that we have stops at 15th and Taylor, but that intersection at Taylor and 15th is highly used by pedestrians and kids going across Taylor. And the stop signs are on 15th, to stop on 15th. Taylor, at that area, you cannot see the cars coming from Meridian. And I've had multiple citizens say, we have got to do something about that. And so I don't see it at all on here. So I would, whether it's like we have on 15th, the lights are flashing or something, because a couple kids almost got hit on their bikes of going across. And so I told them I'd keep bringing it forward.
Good call out.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Public Works Director Madden.
Yes.
For the most, am I correct that what we are putting in here is what's currently in the Transportation Improvement Plan?
Correct.
So those are things that would be good to put forward to consider in next year's Transportation Improvement Plan if they're,
We identified 15th and potentially 17th, and then also 23rd as areas on Taylor that we would look at roundabout or four-way stops. And so all of those will be evaluated, those three locations, through our traffic calming program in 2025.
thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
I have a follow-on, and it's just a basic. I see LOS in the phrase that I assume it refers to level of service. That concept, I'm not sure I grasp. Can you explain what level of service means when we're talking about bicycle or pedestrian level of service? What is that?
Yeah, so level of service is essentially a measure of the transportation system's performance. So the city's current level of service standard is at intersections. So it evaluates vehicle delay at intersections. So a level of service grade between A and F is given dependent on how much vehicle delay is at that intersection. So if it takes 10 seconds for the average vehicle to drive through an intersection, or 20 seconds or 30 seconds, those result in different level of service grades, and the city sets their standard at level of service C or D or E, depending on what they want. And the state is now requiring, by 2029, cities to have level service grades for their pedestrian, bicycle, and transit service as well.
So just A is good and F is bad, like in school.
A is very low delay, F is very high delay, but I caution in recommending adoption of a very high level service requirement, because that means you will tolerate almost no delay before you have to make a capital improvement. So that's kind of the trade-off. Yeah.
Yes, I see Commissioner Johnson.
When I read in here and I've understood, I don't understand why the city of Milton has always accepted a level D. I don't, especially now with our traffic, is it because we're trying to protect the city from anything, or why a level D? I understand not an A because nothing's an A out there, but a D, that has been the acceptable level throughout as long as I can remember for the city of Milton. Is it still the recommendation from Transpo that that is the appropriate level? Are we equating to what maybe Edgewood is doing from LOS levels? I know Meridian has a lot of D and E.
Yeah.
So,
Good question. So we're not recommending changing of the city's level of service standard right now. Edgewood has a level of service standard D or E, depending on the facility. Obviously, kind of the Meridian is a very, is a state facility that carries a lot of traffic. So they set the level of service standard at E for that facility, but it's D elsewhere. So it is very much in conjunction with the City of Edgewood standard.
We have a pairing request.
I don't have an iPhone, so it's not me.
It's probably automatically grabbing. This is why we have our double security.
Okay, great. Sorry, just want to make sure that was clear. All right, well, yes, Commissioner Whalen.
A quick question building off of Commissioner Johnson's question about does having such a level of service as D, it seems to me that that's advantageous to developers in the sense that, well, what they're doing is not really making it that much worse, for lack of better words. And I know in the past, development outside of our city tried through interlocal agreements to say, hey, all the trucks you're moving through here from your warehousing, well, we're not messing with your LOS, we haven't. So it seems to me like it cuts both ways in the sense of, it's because what I interpreted you to say was having a higher, closer to the letter A level of service, if that gets crossed, I thought I heard you say it forces the city to have to do something.
Yes.
And isn't that a good thing?
Yes, but it's more, yes and no. It requires the city to do something, but it also costs more money. So the city is required to maintain your roadway standards. The letter grade, I think, is kind of unfortunate because getting a C sounds kind of bad, but a roadway at level service E is actually at the capacity that roadway is designed for. So level service E is what roadways are designed for. So, a collector can carry 900 vehicles an hour or whatever. That's a level service E.
gotcha.
So level service C or D is, I would say, on the stricter side. We would basically never see a level service B or A requirement anywhere.
Ooh, so that
Well, then I
explains
would-
167.
Well, and yeah, I think having the letter grades makes it, because it's really more about how long are you sitting there, but then also you're trying to kind of match what's around you. So if you make your town the expressway and everything's level A, that just means traffic gets diverted through your city even more often, right?
It could.
Yeah.
It also is going to
Yeah,
push developers to nearby areas. It might.
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah. All right, great. Well, if we have no other questions for transportation, I know your time is valuable, so I will not be offended if you leave, but you are welcome to stay.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
So the second half, which is the capital facilities and utilities, we don't have as fancy of a presentation. So basically, the things that changed and that were updated, and let me log back in. Nope.
We're on 6C now.
So,
Oh, yeah, and then for those that are still kind of going through our packets, page 107.
what pages?
Well, there's still capital facilities, if you're looking at the
Yeah,
bottom
I
corner.
apologize.
107 seems to be where we might be at, because that's capital facilities and utilities, number 7.
Normally, our assistant city clerk puts our packets together. Okay. She numbers the packets very nicely so that there are numbers all through it. I put it together this week and it didn't even dawn on me to do page numbers. So I apologize that the packet does not have page numbers all the way through. But yes, if you, and I have a couple extras if anyone in the audience wants to grab it, but the actual elements have page numbers. And so it's not going to let me do it. So page, looks like 133 in section,
Section 2.
oh,
Or
did I only do
jumping all the way to
transportation?
133? Okay.
Yes, then the 7.
Number 7, after number 7.
7 yellow.
Okay. 7
Or
yellow.
orange, I guess that's orange. 133 starts, so the parts, so the capital facilities and Public Works Director Madden is here if you have any specific questions, but for the capital facilities and utilities section, it was just volume 2, which is the projections and the funding sections of each area. And so I can also zoom in on this, but so anyway, what the Public Works Department was able to provide us is, again, looking at the water plan and the storm plan, is what are those items and numbers? So we take those and we dump them in here. The only exception might be the fact that, like, the administrative facilities, I don't know, is it shown anywhere else?
It is currently not.
Yeah.
It's a fairly new concept.
But we are working on that. So did you want to,
Does Planning Commission know what that is?
no, go for it.
That is a joint facility between East Pierce Fire and Rescue and City of Milton PD, and we're currently conducting a feasibility analysis to determine whether that is in the best interest of both parties.
Great.
So what each of these section does is just kind of, again, taken in what we already have planned in other plans, or in this case, the city council has put this out there. We're doing a joint study. And so if there is, I don't know if the Planning Commission has any specific questions on any of those items that we have added. Again, electric is coming out of the power. So.
A little bit of additional background. Public Works, our team reviewed both the storm capital improvement plan. We reviewed the water comp plan, the TIP, and then updated all of those numbers through this capital program. We also put escalators to account for inflation. And we revised a significant amount of the actual costs from the old 2015 plan.
Great. We'll start with Commissioner Whalen.
A quick question is, could you give us an update on the substation? And where it's located in this packet?
It would be under the electric capital improvements.
Okay.
Angeli, maybe you can help me out on this specific page.
Yes, I'm on it, so let me very carefully see if it'll let me tell you what it is.
Guessing it's going to be after utility analysis.
Oh, sorry, it's on this side. No, they print 135.
Oh,
135.
And that's the volume 2, the
Yes,
rust color.
volume 2,
Okay.
which is the orangish.
Thank you.
That's not the powers.
great. Any other questions continuing down the road? Yes, Commissioner Johnson.
When you looked at page 132, the paragraph talks about 15th, the building on 15th. The council approved removing that, I thought.
The community building has been approved for surplus as of Monday.
Right, and so this paragraph over the the property on 15th and Street across from Triangle Park is planned to be improved. So we might want to make sure that one.
The property is planned for improvement. It is before Park Board right now to recommend to council an improvement, whether it be additional parking, restroom facility.
I see what you're saying.
Yes.
The other, one quick question, do we own we don't own the substation,
The substation the physical substation is owned by BPA,
right?
Bonneville Public Administration, Power.
What is the difference between the city of Milton owns and operates a 15 kilovolt electric distribution system to the substation? That's the part we manage that's attached to the substation?
Everything from the transformer downstream to the actual customer is owned and maintained by the city of Milton. The transformer themselves, the term is getaways. Those are owned and maintained by Bonneville. And we recently had Bonneville review the current substation configuration and the components. There is still, per Bonneville, some life left in those. Bonneville has not agreed to cost share the cost of replacing the substation. We've been continuing over the last 2 years to work with Bonneville on reaching a cost share agreement. We will continue that effort. I know another municipality just reached a conclusion that benefited the community, so we will continue that endeavor. We also needed to know exactly how 167 was going to impact our electric grid, which now we understand, and we've reached agreements with TPU. So those positions are in place, and the city contracted earlier this month with Elcon to start an electric comp plan to dive back into the substation.
Great.
We also vet the potential to have a transmission loop with TPU during that substation review, which may be an option to help support resiliency in adverse conditions. If there's a major power outage, if we have a transmission loop, they can stop a feed from one direction, feed it through the other direction. So those are all conversations that have happened over the last 2 years.
Director Madden, can you also share what we just reached an agreement with Bridge for Fifth Ave?
Yes, we reached an agreement with Bridge developers to fund the transmission lines, or they're actually distribution lines, but it comes in at about $1 million that the city and the residents of Milton were saved. And those improvements will be done by the developer for, we have 3 different phases throughout the city, and so one of those will be completely upgraded with new cable, new poles by Bridge Development. And that is currently in design, and we're looking to break ground on that in March.
Great. Any other questions or comments so far?
On
Yes, Commissioner
Bridge's
Wayne.
contribution, is it to fortify transmission to their location at the gravel
Yes.
quarry?
There was some flexibility in how much power the development would require. I think we've been very fortunate to date of who's coming in there and what the amount of power that they're consuming. It could be much worse for the city of Milton, but still to deliver the potential amount of power that they would need, we required them to upgrade all of the wiring and the transmission to get from the substation to Bridge Development.
And that's one of 3, right? So that takes the equivalent of a third of the city, or at least that section of the city will be upgraded.
Correct.
Great. All right, continue on. Anything else?
The only other project, we currently do not have new projects scoped on the electrical side. The substation is a significant effort that we want to stay focused on. On water, we did have an emergent situation happen this summer. One of our crossings under I-5 broke. We have, since 2 months ago, we've contracted with an engineering firm, and we have a meeting on WashDOT, a preliminary meeting to look at scoping that and permit that replacement under I-5 along Porter Way. And that would allow the city to continue to deliver reliable water to the west side of I-5 and also provide fire flow. So that is a project that was previously scoped, but it's moved up in its timeline.
Cool. All right. Well, I know for me, I'm excited to see dog park on there. That's my, huh? Yeah, just the different park projects. And so that's always fun to see, and that we're continuing to contribute to the community.
Dog park and spray park.
Yes.
Chair?
Yes.
What is PROS? PROS on page 135, the City of Milton PROS Plan, Parks, Recreation, and Open Space, never mind. Okay, the one thing I looked up, spray park, you know, there's been this call for a spray park. Research has come out now that there is a waterborne disease that they've done since CDC did it from 1997 to 2022 related to spray parks. So I wasn't a big fan in the beginning. I sort of was, but it's a waterborne disease that starts with a C, and it's because the water is sometimes not filtrated correctly, and the kids may be real dirty when they get in it, and the water keeps filtering up. So I would like to cut that off and make something else rather than a spray park.
Could leave the city open to liability.
I think there's a lot with it because the water table, especially in the summer, we don't know how good our water table will continue to be. And I think it's a waste of water. And there's other things we can provide kids to do rather than possibly get a disease.
Well, we have all those car washes too. I mean, they can run through those.
I like that.
Sorry.
Hey, we could get the car wash people to allow one day on a hot day for everybody to go through.
Just run through.
Yeah. So I don't know if anybody else thinks the way I do, but I just wanted to present that to it.
So the PROS plan was adopted by the council, so it's definitely something that can be passed along when they do, I don't know if we're going to annually review that or whatever their periodic review is, that can be passed along for concern. They do like recycle the water with some sort of filtration, so, but
Yeah,
the
there might
disease
have
part
been
I don't know
measures
about.
since then, so.
But we can pass that along.
Great.
I will say also that I met with the designers today of Fife's Spray Park, and that is coming in more at 1.5. And so our 400,000 is a very modest facility.
Send everyone to Fife, go through there.
All right, great.
Yeah, some of these are just hopeful, some of these are, we have to do them, so there's a mix of that.
Oh, that's right, this is vision, right?
Yeah, this is if we can find the money and if that makes it up the list, so.
Got it.
And like I said, most of this is being taken from other plans that we do review annually, and then we just incorporate them in so that we're eligible for grants. So in most cases, we're not having to make those decisions, but we can definitely pass on to the departments that do review that for next year's review, so.
Yeah. And I apologize, I read through it and I can't recall now the interurban extension. Is that in here? And I just am not looking at that page. You can just say yes, you don't have to tell me what page.
Yes, it is. It was identified in our multimodal planning effort in our TIP.
Perfect.
And PROS plan, I'm not able to verify that at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's under transportation, not
It's under
PROS.
transportation.
Okay, that's probably why I wasn't connecting it. Okay, great.
Yes. And the city is continuing to work with WashDOT to cohabitate that undercrossing as a
Cool.
viable option to get across 161.
Perfect. All right.
One more question.
Yeah, go for it.
Page 146,
Yes.
the forecast of future needs. Do we really still consider the station a volunteer station? Because I thought we rented it out, which is different than volunteer.
That didn't get, I thought that got pulled out. Maybe it got put back in accidentally.
So,
I will take a look at that. I believe East Pierce Fire and Rescue provided that information. I think they considered a volunteer station,
Okay.
but I'll verify that.
because I thought they had approved to host them at Milton on their budget, unless the budgets get changed next year. Okay, cool.
Thank you.
And maybe their definition of volunteer is not the same as our
Right,
definition
right.
of volunteer, because,
Yeah,
yeah,
okay, that's
I
fine.
believe we got all the information from them.
Yeah, thank you.
We did. We reached out to the libraries, the school district, and East Pierce Fire, and they
yeah.
provided this information.
Our project manager did a great job.
Good. Thank you, thank you.
All right, going once, going twice. Any more questions? All right, perfect. Well, thank you again so much for your time. I appreciate it. It makes a long night for you. Again, you are welcome to stay, but I won't be offended if you take off as we move into agenda item 6C.
Actually, we need to have a recommended, hopefully a recommended motion and pass these on to the city council, please, please. please.
Yes.
Oh, wait.
All right,
Let's see, where is it?
let me get to,
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, okay. Okay, may I make the motion? I move to recommend to the city council, before I start, should I add as the points to be amended with the question about a couple things? As agreed to,
You could say as presented and directed.
okay. I move to recommend to the city council the draft 2024 transportation capital facilities and utilities elements as presented, along with the discussed items for requested changes.
So seconded.
all right. So we have a motion to recommend to city council the draft 2024 transportation capital facilities and utility elements as presented, along with our discussion tonight.
Can we just say as presented and directed? Would that be acceptable?
As presented and directed?
Yeah.
Okay. As presented and directed. Any further comments before going to vote? No? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes unanimous.
Thank you. That is a huge amount of work.
All right.
Now we'll hand it off to the council.
That's a lot of work.
Now I give you the boot. Now you're
Now
welcome
we
to
go to the next one.
All right. What you guys have been waiting for, agenda item 6C.
All right, so, okay, item 6C is the draft zoning map and the changes, proposed changes to Title 17 that are related to the GMA update in the comp plan to make sure we're coordinating with that consistency, as well as other updates that the city is required to make with state legislation. So just a real quick of what I've done since the last month. Because I had an extra month, I tried to really go through and make sure that since we were opening up Title 17, that everything was consistent. So I did not try to change anything, just make sure that the definitions, footnotes, terminology was consistent as we changed things in here, that they changed in here. If there was duplicates, I did remove some of that. Consistency between tables, and then anything that I had from the previous meeting. And your attachment just has those sections that have red line changes. Previously, we had tried to give you the whole section for context, but as we get closer to adoption, the attorney's like, you're only adopting the stuff you're redlining. So hopefully that also helps not feel quite so overwhelming. Based on the last meeting, I did go ahead and just break out the various vehicle uses in the table of uses because per discussion, there is a lot of difference, or there potentially can be a lot of impact differences between whether you're a gas station or fixing cars or different, so that got just broken out. And I did clear out, we had both, I think, automobile and vehicle. So I have proposed to, again, try to keep it all consistent, got rid of the automobile definitions, but keeping the vehicle definitions. There are some definitions that next year, when we start going through some other sections, we will eventually eliminate because they're not necessary. But right now, They're still used maybe in the traffic or in the parking section, so we will continue to do that. We did, with the proposal to use the Sumner Code for all things related to animals, it does increase from 1 horse per acre to 2 horses per acre. So it currently is left at that 2 horses per acre unless there's a consensus to change it. I can drop it back down. I think know of 1 property that has horses, so I did confirm that the emergency housing, it got dropped from 1,000 to 880. It's based on some legislation that the state passed. And so that's where that came from. And that we did pull back. So the off-street parking, I tried to make sure, there is one issue that we're going to discuss that got brought up, but for other than that one thing, all of the proposed changes to off-street parking are specifically linked to required legislation. So, and so next year, the hope is that we will go through the whole section and update it. And tied to that, there was a question about the reduction of the parking spaces. So that is, again, no page numbers. Oh my goodness. But that is it. Currently, our parking spaces are, our regular stall width is 9 by 20, or if it's slanted, it can go up from there. There was a red line to drop it to 8 by 20, so I researched that. That is the state, one of the state legislations that passed is the minimum space dimension for residential parking is maxed at 8 by 20, but that doesn't apply to commercial and other things. So what I did is I put back our parking standards and just put a footnote that says minimum space dimensions for residential parking is 8 by 20. So that way we're not changing the standard for everybody. We're only changing the standard for what we're required to do. I don't know, I don't know how you want to do this. There was a couple things. Oh, I cannot believe I don't have page numbers. There was a couple things that were emailed to me that we can add for discussion. There's 2 items that, and I don't, maybe there'll be more that so if we want to start, if we want, we can just kind of go through each small section, see if we're comfortable with that, move on to the next section. And then there's a few things that either I feel like that I've carried over that I thought we need to talk about. Commissioner Whalen gave me 2 other things that I've identified that need to be decided tonight. And then if there's anything else that gets brought up, does that sound
That sounds like a good
like a
plan.
good section? Okay. So the first is the map. Is there anything, Commissioner Whalen did ask that if we could also put the initials so that, because that's usually what's used throughout it. So that's, and eventually we'll get, right now, it's just a PDF that I'm getting from the consultants. Eventually I'll get the full true file that I can dump in our GIS as well. So we can definitely make sure that the titling is as understandable as possible. So is there any other concerns with the map?
Just so that people who are colorblind can read it, because I'm still not sure they could. All those greens, yellows.
Yeah, it was very difficult.
This printing came out really poorly. So
But even on the computer,
it didn't, yeah.
it's not good.
And part of that's,
It's a snip of a
yeah,
PDF.
part of it's
It's
because
not
it's,
the
I'm
PDF.
dumping it in. So the original is much better. So I just need to get that and see if I can save it in a better format.
Yeah, it's just, it's one of those things and if you've got it on your list to
Yeah.
make sure it's
So-
compliant, that's good by me.
Outside of the fact that I need to work on just the clarity of it
Yeah.
And add the initials.
and add the initials so that everybody knows the difference. Okay.
Okay.
Did you have a question? Real
Yes,
quick?
Commissioner
On
Whalen.
the issue of open space on the zoning map, there are other parcels that Milton owns. There's one I'm thinking of rather large, right, when you look at the interurban trail. In King County, where it makes the arch, there's a substantial parcel that's owned by the city, and there are a few others. that don't show up as green on this map. And I didn't know if that was an oversight or intentional or something else.
Are you talking that wedge?
It's, when you follow the interurban trail, the northernmost arch, it's, yeah, it's an unusual shape.
Sorry, I kind of have, there it is. So can you see my cursor up there?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Although it's an eye test, yes.
Okay, so you're talking up here?
Yes, that's,
Okay. Let me, I will, we can verify that.
and so I didn't know if it was intentional, meaning, well, the city doesn't have an intention to use it as open space, or early discussions were open space versus park space, and so it's not a major, but,
Match whatever the comprehensive plan has. And so if we're missing it on the yeah, and I agree, it is just open space. So we will verify that it matches what the comp plan is, and if for some reason we're missing it on the comp plan too, I'll verify with the Public Works Director, and we will make that recommendation at the council level to correct that.
Good call.
Okay, great. Any other comments on the map? Okay, continuing on.
Any questions or comments on definitions?
Yes, Commissioner Whalen.
thank you. First off, it took me quite a while to, as I was researching, to realize there were a lot of missing pages. And while I can appreciate the reasons why just the red line pages were shown, it wasn't consistently done that way throughout the packet. So I'm thinking I'm getting a partial packet, and instead of calling about it, I'm looking at last month's packet. So in the future, for example, I was wanting to see what our definition was, dwellings.
On what?
Dwellings, dwelling, ADU, dwelling, single family. It's not listed in here, and that's when I realized, oh, wait a minute, there's page missing. So just a note for the future. And the other thing I appreciated in your staff report is the fact that we're going to come back to this. So I'm comfortable with the definitions as they are, and we can beta test and review some of the nuances, definitions with state law and such.
Thank you. And yeah,
So-
definitions was not our focus for this, but it's sort of, some of them have to be done. So yes, I would, next year, I'm hoping we can do a much fuller
Yeah.
review of those.
Perfect.
Now I know I'm not crazy.
I was just,
Well, you
I must
are,
have dropped my
but-
packet, there's no numbers.
I didn't note that, did I? Well, anyway.
And things like major transit stop, it seems to be defined differently whether you're talking about middle housing or ADUs. So that's what got me flipping through, and
yeah.
then I realized,
Yep.
Thank you.
All right.
okay, so thank you. That's my comment.
So then the next two sections are just the listing of the districts, names, and making sure that we're adopting the new zoning map. And then it goes into use tables. So anything on those, on 1712 or 1712-020 before we go to uses?
Just real
Of which
quick and
one?
just say, it's wonderful to see that we're finally putting in code the adoption of the new zoning map. It's been a long, long time coming, like since 2008. Earlier language was much less, so good to see it updated.
Oh, I thought we had gone.
Right there.
Oh, okay, thanks.
All right, so we are now on 1714, table of uses.
So one thing that got brought up is that on kind of the second page under accessory use category, currently accessory structures larger than the principal structure is a conditional use permit. I actually had it as an asterisk because it was one I wanted to clarify if we still wanted to have that. And when I went, oh shoot, I got to clean this up, I just dumped in an A. So if we want to keep it, it should be a C because it should be a conditional use permit. That's what it says in the single family section. And I know that Commissioner Whalen was curious, do we still even need that section or that use?
Yes, I guess we'll check for comment. Commissioner Johnson.
Is it the size or the height of the structure?
It's the size, so the footprint.
The footprint, because I do know of a family in the city that there's a unit that, I think it was the garage, is higher than the house, and they're looking to make it into an ADU, but I don't know if the square footage is bigger than the house, but I
Yeah,
think
so
it is.
it's dealing with, when you look at that section, let me grab it real quick so you guys don't have to look it up. It says, the total area, so basically it's the idea that the area of the accessory structure may not exceed the principal structure unless the applicant satisfies the criteria for a conditional use. So it's looking at the total area. So and again, that idea of a structure that's larger than the principal unit. So we'd be looking at square footage, not height. So I could see it more commonly needed when you're needing when we're a farming community and you're needing a giant barn. I don't know if you want, or you do, and we just make a conditional use permit and we leave it as is. If someone wants a garage that's a 4-car garage that's bigger than their house.
So I guess we're kind of just, as a group, either chatting or checking for consensus.
Or we push it off till next year and just leave it as is.
So as is C.
Conditional use permit.
Okay. I'm comfortable leaving it as is, because I do know of instances where sometimes the garage, you're starting off with an 800 square foot home, so 1,000 square foot garage isn't unheard of.
Right.
That's kind of my leaning.
My
Commissioner Whalen.
leaning would also be to go back to what is existing right now, conditional use permit, and also in the listing of the use to specify square footage. Because that was a great catch on the comment there.
Okay.
Okay.
The other?
Yes, Commissioner Whalen.
Just a quick thing. Is there a place in our code, and it seems it might be helpful here, to say if it's not listed, it's not permitted? I know we've done a good job of saying that and actually calling some things out,
thought I
but
read
I'm
that.
envisioning it might be a while till we get back to this.
Omission does not imply permission.
Oh, there you go. Well, some people do see it that way, sadly. And so to have a clarity that if the use is not listed.
Where is it?
I saw that language somewhere, but I don't know where I saw it. And we have no page numbers, so. But I do know I saw that somewhere.
I thought it was something to do with
Maybe
a
it's in a section
similar.
we're not editing. Let me
Yeah.
double check. It's there, so let me see the wording if we're okay with that.
No, I could have sworn I saw it in
I
this
know, I
packet.
thought it was too, but oh well. Let me see what I got. City of Milton Code 17. Yeah. Use.
I was
Special
guessing it was
uses?
similar use determination, but that's just for making the determination. So it was a suggested addition, and I didn't see it.
Oh, I think it's
Added
under
to the
general.
table.
It's under general. Let me find it. Yes.
I used 1744.
Yes, so 1744-013, which I believe is in here.
Citing of essentially. You said 133 or 143?
1744-013.
And that's what got kind of tricky. Not everything was here. So can we just move on because time is?
Any use not specifically authorized by this chapter or allowed by conditional use is prohibited, except for the following.
Right. Okay.
And where is that 1744-013?
So 013 says land use administrator may authorize uses for all zoning districts that have similar characteristic to uses specifically cited in chapter 1714 in making an affirmative determination that a use is similar to one specifically cited, the land use administrator must find that the trip generation and type of traffic, parking, and circulation, utility demand, environmental impacts, physical space needs, and clientele characteristics of the use differ less than 10% from the characteristics of the use specifically cited. And then there's also a section of prohibited uses.
Yep.
That's where I saw it was
And
prohibited.
that's the
use.
16, 1714.16.
I want to make sure that, because if it's in here, then here we go. For prohibited uses, any use not specifically authorized by this chapter or allowed by conditional use is prohibited, except the following. Uses set forth as special uses, uses determined by the land use administrator to be similar to uses authorized by the title. So if it's not already listed, we don't decide that it's similar, it's prohibited, even if it's not in the prohibited list. And that is
2 places.
right after the special uses section that goes on and on and on and on forever.
Well, I would just make a suggestion, and just for consideration, is to add a footnote next to prohibited uses or something that directs people to that, because it could be helpful. It's not a requirement, but it was just a suggestion for clarity. And that was what number, 1744?
So 1744-016 deals
016 is
with
where
prohibited
the
uses.
prohibited
And I
uses.
agree, now that we have a prohibited uses sections, we do want to make that, so that could be another added. So is there consensus to add a footnote 7 that references that section?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
On the table?
Yes. All right,
Yes.
unanimous, yes.
Yeah, on this,
Yep, that's fine, I agree. Because most people will look at a table before they read,
Yeah.
I feel.
People hate to read
At the state level.
at every level.
Okay, great. Any other comments on table of uses?
Which one?
Table of uses?
Speaking of table of uses, while we're talking about residential and residential parking, that's NR1, NR2, URM, all count as residential for the purposes of parking, is that correct? The parking spaces? I know I'm jumping
Good
ahead.
question.
so, our definition of residential zone is neighborhood residential 1, neighborhood residential 2, and multifamily,
Okay, and that's URM
URM.
is multifamily.
Yep, everything else is considered non-residential.
And when we say multifamily, we're talking duplex, triplex. Are we
Duplex,
talking the
triplex,
whole?
it could be apartments, but
Okay.
it's at a lower level than what the uptown mixed use would allow.
Okay,
So it's not going to be huge. They're not huge,
okay.
which we'll get to that density as we go through. But we've discussed that in the past, and it's what we're getting now is a lot of townhouses, and so.
Okay.
Yes, Commissioner Whalen.
Quick question on table of uses, the second page that starts with light manufacturing. Outdoor assembly facility, is that an international building code category, or could we say outdoor public assembly facility? I want to just see assembly facility, I think of a manufacturing plant.
Outdoor assembly facility is a term, and
Okay,
it should now be in
definitions.
the definitions, which assembly, it means people getting together. So it's your outdoor theaters, it's your, what we have historically done as the special uses. So those are, if someone wanted to do a giant theater or rodeo or venue or something like that, that is an outdoor.
And it's worth noting that that also has a footnote to go to 1742,
Special uses.
special uses.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions on the table of uses? I'm looking up this time, not at my own sheet, so I'm not ignoring anyone. All right. With that, we will move forward to, let's see, we're going through a lot of the cross. Table of Land Development Dimensional Regulations.
All right, the hot topic of the night.
Yes.
So I tried to, the very end of your packet, if I can find my end of my packet. I've tried to add some of the information, just to, again, and I feel bad that people left before we got to this part. Hopefully they can either see the stuff that was in the packet, or they can listen, or we can pass that information on. So just to, there was a lot of questions of why and different things. So when we presented the, there is nothing in legislature that specifically says that we have to reduce it from 75 to 60. What the framework consultants did is try to look at different ways to subtly increase. I mean, we've increased density drastically along Meridian in the Uptown District. We've added mixed use in a few other areas, and the idea was to do some low increases in the neighborhood residential 1 and neighborhood residential, well, basically neighborhood net residential 1, which this applies to. So it was presented in the slides at the October meeting, though I agree the slides came to us late, so it didn't go out. And then it was presented at the first meeting in November and then discussed at the second meeting in December. So the samples were to, so again, it's one tool that is suggested to allow some increased density. The examples used were to show the impact on various neighborhoods. I know I'm comfortable with my calculations. I know some have disagreed with that. For example 1. Example 2 is intentionally to show that there are parts of the cities this would not affect at all. And then example 3 shows that it would increase, if you were doing a subdivision on a large lot, it might allow 2 more units. But again, it is not a requirement. It is just one suggestion and one tool of others that we are using. If the Planning Commission can recommend that, or they can make a consensus to not recommend that.
Yeah. So as far as comments go, I'll go last, if we want to start with Commissioner Whalen.
I'll start and just say that I appreciated the citizen comments. I've surveyed folks and found that that is a real consistent message. They don't want this change, reducing minimum lot width. My research is, it's not required, as was mentioned earlier, by state mandates. It's not needed. Framework in their existing conditions report state in their first bullet point under land use. Milton has sufficient land use capacity for housing and employment targets. So this change isn't needed, and it's not wanted. And I would also say it's premature. It's premature in that there isn't a plan to mitigate the impacts. It's sort of like shooting the arrow and then aiming for the target. And so infill is a sensitive topic. It really requires some thought and creative and expertise behind the thinking. I would rather see something where there were overlay districts within neighborhoods, which was something spoken of a few years back, of what about local neighborhoods and making them unique and special. And for the example number 1, 13th Avenue, which by the way includes lots that are addressed on Taylor and Oak, but my analysis, knowing the street as I do, just 13th addressed parcels, there's 11 lots that could easily subdivide. And when I say easily, there's nothing in the way, or it's vacant, or it's a little carport that's detached. So it's not much of an obstacle financially. We have development in the area that's, well, they had an attached carport, and that attached carport was taken down so they could develop the rear portion of their lot. So, you know, when you make analysis, and yes, metrics and criteria, you can differ, but I believe the council member who brought this up was trying to say, this is a big change on this street when 11 lots can really easily short plat. And then there's another 4 that, well, you know, might take a variance. And you can look through history to see that people kind of scratch their head looking at something saying, how did the rules get applied in that circumstance to produce that result? It's all up to the decision maker in interpretations. I understand that. But when you have such a significant impact, I think it really deserves to be respected neighborhood-wise to come up with a better plan, whether it's, they don't have to be huge design standards, but you could make rules like duplexes have to look like single-family homes. There's simple stuff that could be done to try to buffer this down. So I'd rather see us have a plan first for infill development before we just made this change. And so, you know, some people were feeling a little like, well, maybe I don't want to do it, but what if my neighbor does? I'm going to be affected by that. So when they hear things like, it's really not much of a change, that just depends upon where you live and what you think about things. Another reason it's premature, I don't think anyone was here when we had the concurrency review. The county came in and said, your comp plan says you're doing this, but you're doing that. It's such a big difference. We're putting your comprehensive plan in suspended animation, and you have this much time to come up with reasonable measures. And that was quite a scramble for the development director at the time and the planning commission. It's a negotiation, it's a process. It's just, I look at this sort of a change, reducing a lot width. I mean, that's a very acceptable sort of reasonable measure to take. So I look at it from a strategic perspective and say, it's better to hold back on this, to use it if we have to, and we don't even know how the doubling of accessory dwelling units are going to play out. I don't know that we're going to need a reasonable use measure, but it sure would be nice to know we got one, and we should be working on it, really. And so it's obvious I have strong opinions, and I dearly hope that I've persuaded planning commissioners to drop this change. It's not needed, it's not required, and it's definitely not wanted. And so I hope I've said enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson, or did you want to respond first at all, staff?
Oh,
I love your glasses.
huh?
I love your glasses.
Oh, thank you. I want to bring happiness to people.
Thank you.
I wish people that come and want to show against an action would start at the state level that comes in. This isn't part of the state level, but it's the whole thing that is coming from the state. And luckily, we're still at a size of the city where we're able to exempt from some things. Certain cities, they don't have an option over a certain population. And the Puget Sound area, King County is controlling this whole area in the legislature and everything for urban, you know, semi-urban areas. And we have a feeling in Milton, we're not urban, but we really are. When you look at the highway and you look at the port, anytime you're near a port, you are not rural. You're in an urban growth area. However, everyone that knows me, when it's the law and it's required, I stick by it. I lost my election because of bridges and because of the church, because I stayed with what was required by the legislature, by the Supreme Court, and the law. This isn't. So people are going to be surprised. I say don't change it until it's required. This project has been so big and is so good so far and so many things. It's giving us something now to have better control, have a better way of zoning, and a better identification. So until the state comes in and says, you will do this, I say, people, you get to the state beforehand. Don't wait till they pass it. You got to follow those legislations. You got to follow us. We say, this bill is coming. If you don't like it, get your butt up to the state. So I'm not for it.
Great.
All right. In a nutshell, it sounds to me like our consultants just said, hey, think about doing this. We don't have to do it. It's not going to hurt Milton anyway if we don't. We have a very strong preference, including my high school classmate showed up, to leave it at 75. And if there's no reason to move it down, and we have such strong public support to leave it at 75, let's do so.
Great. Yeah, I want to say that I'm along with the consensus that given the public comment, that there's not a requirement to do so, that we leave it at 75. I do want to say that I appreciate frameworks and staff's suggestion. I do see the intent behind it, and it is just a recommendation. I do feel like this kind of at some point got misconstrued to be trying to be slipped under or something. I did go back and check our notes. It was on there, but I do agree that maybe we could have highlighted it a bit more or called a little bit more attention to it. But I am glad that to the end of it that it was caught. And I'm so glad to see that we had public participation, and I'm like, all right, we're going to start threatening that more often just to get you guys coming in. Not really, but I do appreciate the process so much, and I want to acknowledge that when we get citizen participation, that your feedback is welcome. We want to hear it, and we are going to take it into consideration, and we're going to proceed with it as long as law allows to. So thank you. It
So
sounds like we've got a consensus.
Consensus is to leave it to 75, and that will be changed.
Great.
So the next table is the,
Excuse me, I
sorry.
apologize. I noticed a difference between the November 6th table of land development dimensional regulations and this table. And it is related to
Oh, yes.
third row down, standard net density, dwelling units per acre. In an earlier rendition, NR1 was NA. NR2 was also not applicable because of the 3 dwelling units per lot numbers, what my assumption was. So now I see in this table, there's a difference.
So that was, again, thank you for pointing that out for me to clarify. When I was doing my full review, we do allow multifamily in the NR2 with a conditional use permit. So in that case, they could go up to 12 with a conditional use permit if they do that. So, and that's why that changed from an NA to a 12, which on the use table, it does say, so on the use table for a 1 and 2 family dwelling, it says allowed, accessory, it says allowed, multifamily dwelling unit, it says conditional use. So if they wanted anything above that, they would have to use, and that just matches what currently is allowed in the moderate family density.
Okay, so so it's just confusing. So if we're in the neighborhood residential zone 2, which is currently
So I guess that doesn't
called
work, does it?
residential moderate density, you were expressing it as when it's a multifamily structure, is what I thought I heard. Then you use the dwelling units per acre number, but if it's a single-family home with or without ADUs, you use the 3 lots,
So
3 dwelling units per lot. So I'm how does that work, and could we make it more clear?
Yes, we could add a footnote. Footnotes seem to be the king for these tables. That specifically on the 12 under the NR2 that says something about that standard net density would be used for multifamily with a conditional use permit. Does that?
So there'll be a footnote by the number 12, and the footnote is going to state for multifamily development, which is 3 dwelling units or more, you can use the 12 dwelling units per acre number.
And if they go to that, it will say that it's a conditional use permit. So it's not allowed outright. It has to go through the whole process.
Okay. And then when does the 3 dwelling units per lot come in the NR2?
So that's the same as in the NR1, that any lot can do a single family and 2 ADUs, or a duplex and 1 ADU, which is what we had discussed.
Okay. I have a comment about ADUs when we get to them, but, okay, so this is the correct way for the table, and you're going to add a footnote to clarify it's for multifamily only.
I will add the
Thank you.
footnote. And I did change a little bit of the language, again, trying to make it, I was confused with, because we had like standard net density and maximum net density, and that confused me, and I figured if it confused me, it confused other people. So when I double checked with Framework and I went through and read all the sections again, what it is there's a bonus net density. And so that's why all those little footnotes talk about, so depending on if you build a adult family community or retirement community, there's a bonus. If you do certain things, if you're in the mixed use and you go over retail or over retail, there's a bonus. So basically I changed it to bonus net density, which I think is more clear than maximum, because people were thinking, well, how do I, so I did clarify that on that page.
And my last comment is just to say, perhaps we'll add a section in the code, but you do have footnote number 4, giving some explanation about the bonus, or the bonus dwelling units for religious organizations. My concern was, what was the policy? How would this go about? And I haven't studied it much, but I'm presuming the RCW outlines
And that's why at this
the
point, I figure
steps.
if we reference the RCW, and I also did, the language, again, it kind of references the RCW, is in each zoning section that it applies as well. But I felt at this point that was the most direct way, that basically we are required to allow bonuses if the property, for affordable housing, for religious organizations, there's a bunch of definitions. So it seemed like the easiest at this point is to reference that section, because then we're not having, that way we have to go there, and it says it has to be this type of affordable housing. This is what it qualifies are. Our flexibility is in the number, and so this is the numbers that again, kind of, that we came up with.
I want to say I appreciate referencing back to the RCW, because the state has been so up and down and changing and evolving with this. And so kind of saying, rather than update it every time, let's just reference the RCW.
Yeah, and if we decide next year we want to add, if we want to pull that language in, we definitely can.
We'll let them hold it for a
But
year
that seemed like that
first.
was the most efficient way to do it at this point.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Anything else as far as this land development dimensional regulation table?
Oh, just to clarify.
Yes, Commissioner Johnson.
That we're saying the 75 feet is for the NR1 only.
Correct. We're
Correct.
we're leaving all of those as is.
Yep.
And I've got it noted.
Okay.
All right, so 2 things that I have for the building bulk table. The first is, and again, this is one that we may want to put off till next year, because the numbers are me just sort of looking, we have talked quite a bit about wanting a maximum impervious surface coverage. That would be structures as well as driveways and patios and stuff. But it's been talked about, but there wasn't a draft. So I created a draft with what I kind of did some looking at what other cities have done, what seemed to be reasonable above what they're already doing. So there could be, right now, there's nothing. So there could be consensus to go with this. There could also be consensus to say, you know what, we do want this, but let's push it off till next year so we can do a little bit more study to make sure those numbers are what
And
we
is
want.
it absolutely ridiculous to put this in now and then also add it to our agenda for 2025? Yes, it's ridiculous, or yes, that's reasonable.
So to put it in and then relook at it next year, we can do that.
Because checking with the group, I think it's a good measure to have in place, just to make sure we're ahead of it.
So leave it in?
Leave it in, but also add it to our agenda for 2025
Yes,
to
yes,
revisit it.
Because I think Commissioner Whalen always agrees with me on this, is that when we have the stuff in here, it protects us. We can look at it and always adjust it, but we found when we didn't have something in there is when we've gotten the kick in the butt.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm seeing heads nodding.
Yeah.
Is that, and those numbers as stated, are those good placeholders?
Yep.
Okay, great. Same idea with the build to live
So the bill,
line?
so I changed the terminology just because, so this was discussed, I think 3 meetings ago. The idea that Framework has suggested when you are in the commercial zones that are probably more service-oriented, retail-oriented, that mixed use, that you say your first building has to be, it can't be right on the sidewalk, but you don't want it in the back. Because the idea being that studies show that if you put the parking lots in front, people, you're not going to see what's in there. And if you're trying to make it more pedestrian oriented, you kind of want the buildings up front where people can kind of see, maybe there's street parking, but there's like, you can see in the windows, you can see what's there. We do currently in our Uptown design guidelines, which is along Meridian, we do already require, and they use the term build to line, so that's why I switched it. They had like it was like this sentence. So this, and I created a definition so that definition matches what's there. So currently we require the idea that the main first building can't be farther than 10 feet from the right-of-way property line in the Uptown mixed use. But their recommendation was to make that 10 for the town center and 15 for our new one, which is neighborhood commercial. There was discussion, I didn't feel like the commission, like there were still some questions and some thoughts that were wanting to go on. So I wanted to bring that back and make sure that, are we comfortable with this, which is what is proposed, or do we not want this in here at all? And just, obviously it would stay with the design guidelines for the Uptown, but it wouldn't apply to the others. We are going to talk design guidelines next year. So again, it is one that could come, if we're not comfortable right now, it could come back in conversation next year when we talk designs for both. Because obviously our Uptown guidelines need to be revised, and we need to look at, I think those could be revised and used for a couple other areas as well.
Any comments from, yes, Commissioner Whalen?
I would say, while I have trepidation about this, I support keeping it in. And we can look at it again. And I'm curious, just add another thing to your to-do list of, if you have a lot of developers in the mixed-use areas saying, oh, come on, this is not going to work. I mean, you could, there'd be feedback, sort of see how it works. So thank you for the definition, and, I'm okay with it, and if it's utterly impossible, there's still the variance process, so there's ways to rework it. And also, thank you for the definition on impervious surface coverage as well. You updated it, thank you.
Any other comments on this build to line? I'll say that while I'm not a huge fan of it, I think that it is a good compromise, that it is in those more mixed-use zones and neighborhood zones versus commercial. You're still allowing parking in front. So I'm okay with how it's presented.
Could I
So
also-
checking for,
Just
yeah.
ask a question. I thought there was a footnote about whether or not residential use was on the first floor of a mixed-use building, or, and I could be confusing.
Yes, so down at the bottom, there's a little 6. Buildings with street-level residential uses and accessory structures are exempt.
Okay.
So the idea, I think, being that obviously accessory structures don't need to be up there. And if it's residential, the intent is when you're having retail, commercial services, you want windows, you want people to be able to see what the businesses are. If they're houses or apartments, you're not wanting necessarily people looking in your windows. And so in that case, if they just develop it as multifamily apartments and there's no commercial element, then they could design it as, they don't have to follow that design guideline.
Yes,
Just
Commissioner
one
Whalen.
more quick question on maximum structure coverage. Is that a cumulative on the lot, or is it per structure? I would appreciate a clarification.
That is total.
That is total. Could we say that? Because building height, well, it's per building, but
Okay,
if
well,
it's,
it's coverage, so it's the square
matter.
footage of each of the building. So yeah,
I might be confusing it with the maximum building footprint, and that's where I got the, are we talking about all of them or just one? Because the maximum building footprint is per building. But maximum structure coverage,
yes, and
that's for all of them.
Related but different.
Is there
I
a word for
believe
that?
all of the, I tried to make
way
sure
to say
all of
it's
the
for all of them?
definitions work for that.
A word to say for it's all of the structures? Or just?
Inclusive.
Inclusive of all structures. You're the word person there.
So structure,
1708830. Is that what you were trying to look for?
so you're wanting to make sure that they realize, so that it's not an individual structure, that it's the structure total, maximum. We could just add total.
Or inclusive of all, or, anyway, the concept of trying to make it clear is the request.
Yeah.
Because I don't know about binding site plans. I mean, there's so many nuances I don't understand that it could get, as you get into other zones.
There was a definition. Yes, I will either add the word total or see if.
Total per lot or
Yeah.
something like that.
Okay.
Can we do a placeholder, total per lot, and if you come up
Sorry.
with,
Yes, so I've made a note that we will, I wrote total there for now, but I'll make sure that whatever term we're using is clear.
Great. I want to respect that we are after 8 o'clock. Is everyone okay to continue?
We gotta.
Okay.
It's fine.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're staying respectful of time.
Anything else on that table?
Oh, keep going.
All right, land use regulations. I will say that I did do, the only change that I believe is there is, under capital facilities, the setback for capital facilities is 10. Let's see, how did I do this? So what I did was I made the front yard match that, because it seemed like if we're saying that you can only have to set back a capital facilities building 10 feet, we shouldn't have to require landscaping of 20. So that matches. But I did put, let's see, when I sort of went through all of the footnotes, because I did kind of restructure this table, I kept walls and rockeries are allowed, provided that the width of required perimeter landscaping is increased by the width that is used by walls or rockeries. I made sure it says all required landscaping must meet the provisions of the landscaping section. I kept for developments that require landscaping, all areas not proposed for buildings, parking, or driveways shall be landscaped. And see MMC 1744110D for additional provisions. Get back up for a second. Oh, if we go back real quick to the building bulk table. I did add, let's see. I think this is an addition, or maybe it's just a holdover. But on the minimum rear setback for capital facilities, there's a little footnote 8 that says the minimum rear yard setback shall be 20 feet when the property abuts a residential district.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're, so, I mean, in some cases, like here, City Hall is sort of its own little thing, and we technically abut ourselves. But if something has houses, then we were going to require a bigger setback.
good.
And then, like I said, I did reduce the capital facilities. I would like to, on our list, is to review the landscaping, the whole section. And so part of me is not sure, there's a part of me that's not sure that a separate table, like, should this just be all rolled into that section? But all of that is for next year. I think we do need to do a full review and overhaul. And there's some gaps that I know that's there. I know there's some gaps other people have brought up. So I'm hoping this is a good placeholder. And then next year we can really dive into that section.
Yes, Commissioner Whalen?
Quick comment on the headers across the top. I love seeing the color, mixed use, the MX instead of town center,
Oh, yep.
TCMX.
Thank you.
And the other question that comes to mind is, how do the build to lines work with the landscaping for those, let's see, the mixed use category and the neighborhood commercial? They all had build to line, or distances, excuse me, build to line.
So the build to means, yeah. I mean, theoretically, they could build right on the property line. But they can't build farther back than 10 feet. So if they don't, then in most cases, they're probably landscaping unless they have some other, and there is that section, like it says, if it's not for buildings, parking, or driveway, you have to landscape it.
So the build to line is sort of a maximum front yard setback. You can't go any farther back with the face of your building than
Yes.
these
So
numbers.
basically, you have to put your building between the
property line,
and either 10 or 15 feet.
okay.
So,
And so is there a conflict, that's just food for thought, but is there a conflict with the build to lines regarding landscaping?
no, I don't think so, because what it,
Okay,
yeah, because those are the areas that we're kind of saying there's not a minimum landscaping, but if they don't build right up front and they're building it back, they're going to have to do landscaping. Maybe there's a pathway or something, but, or maybe there's a patio, but it can't just be dirt.
right, but it says 0, that's what threw me off. Perimeter landscaping, 0.
These are
The
but
mixed
these are
uses.
minimums.
Right, oh, okay, they're minimums, got it.
So,
Gosh, I never picked that up, that they're minimums.
yeah,
Where does it say that?
it doesn't. I guess it's just inferred. I mean, you have to, I mean, we're not going to stop them from doing more, but they have to do, but we could add minimum if that's.
Minimum perimeter landscaping.
We're going to be workshopping this in 2025, right?
Yeah, and we are
Okay.
gonna,
Yeah.
we'll go through, like I said, I think this whole landscaping as a whole needs to be kind of looked at. But yes, those are minimums, because if you want to put in more, we'd never say no.
Okay,
Great.
okay, well, I'm happy with adding the word minimum or coming back to it as a whole package.
Okay. So moving to 1720, so a lot of the rest of this is updating the,
Yeah, so the next couple ones are all of the zoning sections, making sure the names and the required things are in there. I don't think, let me double check, I don't believe there's anything in these sections that aren't required, or I was asked to kind of maybe add a little bit more to the purpose, so I tried to do that in a couple of places. But there's nothing drastically different than, hopefully, than what was already there. and the new zoning language, and again, nothing, other than making sure, like I said, I think I added to the purpose, and I made sure that the bonus sections were all up to date and correct, because we had changed them a little bit. There shouldn't be anything drastically challenging in those. So is there anything in those sections? We're removing planned development. I don't think there's any changes to the business one at all, so it's not even included. And then obviously the special uses, again, I think special uses at some point, I don't even know, we may not want any of those, but I didn't want to completely at this point get rid of them, so.
Okay, so as far as chapter 1720, before we get into special uses, 1742, any questions, comments on that portion? Going once, going twice? Okay, 1740, so special uses, you said you updated kind of based off of what we had so far, but that would be a good item to revisit.
Yeah, so if there's not, yeah, so once you get to 1742, which is special uses, I took out all the language for the ones that we've already said we want to prohibited. I've left the few things that fall under assembly. Again, it might be one, that section as a whole probably should be looked at.
Yeah.
In the next, I don't know if next year's, I don't know if it's a high priority, but in the next couple of years, I think it'd be worth looking at those because I don't know how likely those are to even come, or if we want any of those anymore, because you need an
Something to
awful
put
lot of
towards the
land.
end of the 2025 list. Yes, Commissioner Whalen.
Quick comment, I was thinking we might, I know it would take time, but on 1729 Neighborhood Commercial District,
29?
we zoomed through all the zoning districts. Just a quick question, I was looking for a definition of building envelope at the very bottom of the bulk
Add that.
regulations for neighborhood commercial NC district. There's a discussion about some of the rules being different if residential units are added or constructed entirely within the building envelope. And it's probably a real common term for all you folks in the building world, but what is it?
It just means the exterior of the building.
Yeah.
That's what it means. Okay. Because we have a lot of things that are obvious in our definitions, and so.
I can add that. That was
The
one I know
envelope's
that
the
was
shell.
requested, so I will add a building envelope definition.
Okay. And the other thing that this brought to mind is to add to the to-do list is our noise ordinances. We have noise abatement and noise regulations. There are decibel levels listed, and with those decibel levels, they're associated with 3 different categories. I think it was patterned after the WAC. And then in that, I have it right here, within that, it says that commercial means CF and M1. So which is saying that's the noisiest. But someone could look at neighborhood commercial and say, well, it's commercial, so that means I can be noisier because you're commercial. So is allowed the highest decibel level.
Yeah,
So we need to look at the chapter 9.37 noise regulations, and there's an update that I would recommend go to council right away, where C1, 2, and 3, where it's saying these names in the table equal, and it lists all the zoning districts. If we could update that to match the intent of the changes.
Yep, so, yeah, that's not a planning commission one, but it is a council one, and we can definitely look at making sure that the terms match the new zones.
Yeah, so that was 9.37.010 C 1 through 3.
Okay.
Thank you. I apologize for backtracking.
So I'm at 44.016,
Okay.
if that works. We're getting there, we're getting close.
Prohibited uses.
I
Okay,
think all the controversial ones are done.
perfect.
So I have started going through, because I realize we have multiple terms for, in essence, the land use administrator, like here it was zoning administrator, other places it's community development director. Our definitions say land use administrator, so that's the term I'm going to try to use. And there's some sections that that would have been the only change, and so I didn't do it this round. But as we get into those other sections, that is the term that I'm going to try to be consistent
Great.
as we go through. And then we are required to have a citing of essential public facilities section. I know that actually wasn't in this legislation. And if we don't, it makes it easier for an essential public facility to be cited here without our process. So I sort of just copied, it's probably Milton's because I trust the guy that did the Milton planning. Hopefully I didn't leave Furcrest in here anywhere. But it basically, it's good because it goes through and says, you know, they have to provide us options, they have to have justification. So that fills that spot. And then, so any questions on that?
Just a quick one. Essential public facilities, by the definition, I'm curious, would telecare, is that a medical facility or is that an essential public facility on Highway 99? And I think there's also one down by Freeman Road and 20th Street East and Fife. There's another.
Yeah, on the 5 side.
Yeah. So is that?
I don't know, it's usually, I don't know if that's big enough to be an essential public facility. Usually, like I said, it talks about airports, transportation facilities, correctional facilities. It can be mental health group home facilities I think if they're large enough. And again, that's something I can do some more research on for next year if we want to buff that one up as well.
Thank you.
But thank you for looking out for
Yeah.
City of
Yeah, that
Milton
was
and
one of those
putting
weird
that in
ones where I
place
went,
now.
oh, shoot, there's nothing in here. So,
Good add.
then the next, so again, the strikeouts and the red lines, our framework went through, and due to some of the changes in our zoning, some of the things that they found, my understanding is those are just things that are requirements. Again, we haven't had one apply yet. I don't think it'll be huge. And I think at this point, the only place it would be allowed again is still business, which now shrinks because we only have business. Meridian's no longer business. So we've actually kind of shrunk where they can even place.
Okay.
So we needed to sort of increase what could be allowed in that area because they're no longer allowed in other places of the city. So that's sort of where that balance came from.
Because I think we were trying to target that, like, we allowed like 4 or something.
Yeah, it was like,
I don't
yeah.
know.
So
Okay.
so that section is just stuff that they, and I went through it with them and they said, yes, this is why we believe that this is legally, we need to change these.
And then
Same
what
for the
is
next couple sections.
This regulatory limits on outdoor encampments, is that
Which one?
V, right above 1744, 140?
Yes, that's just that's,
Okay, so that's just basically
Yeah.
kind of pre-addressing
yeah,
that
that
and
there are
saying that-
different rules for religious owned property. And so
Okay.
that's just acknowledging it.
Okay,
And we also have code on that topic.
Yes, which we probably should double check that it still matches state law.
Because it was
I'll
done a
add
while
that
ago.
to my list too.
Yeah.
okay.
There's a whole section sort of near
Yeah,
temporary housing.
Under temporary, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so we are at still 1744. I've gotten as far as like ADUs.
Yeah, so ADUs.
Was there anything else on?
There's a lot of blue strikeouts because of the new laws.
Okay,
And most of that just comes from, like I said, the way we're going to interpret it, unless someone challenges us, is that we can have 2 with a single house or 1 with a duplex, so maxing at 3. We did put in that, because it does say that you could convert an existing structure even if it doesn't meet setbacks on lot. We're putting the January 1st, 2025 date stamp on that, so any future, they can't try to get around the rule going in the future. And then I know there's a question in parking, so we can just wait till we get to parking and talk about.
I did have a couple of questions on the ADU section.
great.
If I may, thank you so much. I know that all of our rules about ADUs aren't really due until June of 2025. So perhaps this is a placeholder for these comments. But I've noticed in state legislation, it really talks about the configuration of accessory dwelling units, which are, like, makes total sense with one ADU. But with two, I don't know that there's enough clarity to say that you can't attach two ADUs and call them a detached ADU. Because they were talking about one attached, they gave these configurations, and then I got to thinking, I wonder if
You could
somebody
essentially add a
could
duplex.
attach two ADUs. And so that was a question, it didn't seem to be addressed in this, and how frequently it would happen. But that was a question. The home occupation rule, I want to say that's number 7. So the page that's got those little pictures of the 3 kinds of ADU examples down near the bottom. Number 7, a home occupation that does not regularly receive customers
So now
is
we have
in
potential
either
of-
or both.
Yeah,
And then I thought, well, are we saying both ADUs, or the intent was the principal and the ADU? So it may be like future discussion, but that was another question for me. Do our rules as they're written require that it's on a permanent foundation? I know, does the building code, because I think there's something here that says you got to build according to
Yeah,
codes.
so the building code is going to take care of that.
Okay.
As to, yeah, that, I could fix that language to say something like,
But not all.
it's only allowed, we could switch it to a home occupation that regularly receives customers is only allowed in one unit, because that was sort of the intent.
Yeah.
Or we can leave it and discuss it next year.
And
But it says in one, but not both of the units.
Well, the idea was that you would have a principal and ADU. Now you can have a principal and 2 ADUs, so now we have 3.
so which both is both?
Yeah, so it's just that I didn't address the fact that you could theoretically have 3.
So you would just say maybe permitted in only one unit?
Yeah,
In only one of the?
Yeah.
Okay.
In only one
Okay.
unit.
yeah.
And then the other issue, in talking with Department of Commerce, again, and I talked to MRSC, and I said, the way the state legislature has worded things, do we have to allow an ADU with a duplex? MRSC was like, you need to talk to Department of Commerce. I talked to Department of Commerce, and they said, no, you are not required by the 2 different pieces of legislation. And I said, and I explained, the single-family home, 2 ADUs, we're counting it as 3. He said, yeah, you've satisfied the rule for the ADU legislation and the middle housing legislation. The fact that you're allowing a duplex on the site, which is 2, the law is saying you have to have at least 2 of the middle housing units on a lot. He said, you've satisfied that. He said, it's a policy decision. And so I lean towards not allowing it for duplexes just to
So
save some challenges.
the ones that I sat through, and maybe they're changing it, the ones I sat through, and when I read it, it talks about, there are some who have been arguing that it says we have to allow 2 per duplex, because it says 2 per structure, or 2 per principal structure or something, which would actually be 4 units. So that's why we were sort of taking the middle road. So yeah, it is one that has been constantly changing, because the previous stuff that they were putting out said, well, a lot of what they were saying is talk to your attorneys, which wasn't terribly helpful. That from our conversations, they weren't willing to give an answer. So if they're giving an answer, that's different than what it's been. Yes, we could definitely leave it as is, I would hate to start going backwards at this point, but we could have it as 3, or we could have it as 2, and then bring it back next year if I get more information.
Don't look at me.
Our options,
I think
so
see
we're
much
looking
work.
at,
I don't want to go back
yeah,
because I think it's going to come.
So the question would be, so if we have a single unit, we have to allow 2 ADUs. That's clear. The question is whether or not with a duplex,
Which is middle housing,
do,
ADUs or not, so that's what the
right,
distinction.
but when you read it, it's not, it's a little convoluted. Because it talks about structures can be this, this, and this, and you have to add ADUs to it. But, so the question before Planning Commission, if I'm, based on what I'm hearing Commissioner Whalen say, is do we want, right now, the draft says a duplex can allow 1. Or we could say a duplex can't allow 1, and then either way, we could do more research next year to see where they're settling. So we could leave the draft as is, and then if we find out that we don't have to do the duplex plus 1, we could always change it.
Why don't we table that discussion for that knowledge?
Or, yeah, so if we just leave the text as is, it would allow a duplex, and again, I don't know that anyone's gonna run out right away. I mean, there might be one to do a duplex and an ADU. And then if, as they get clearer information next year, if we decide we don't have to, we can always reverse that thought.
And we also don't know what they're going to do in the legislature next year. Right?
okay. So I'm hearing one person wants to
Not allow
remove the
ADUs.
ADU from the
And,
duplex.
and that's per my conversation with Dave
Yeah.
Osaki. And he is the person in charge of the ADU and the middle housing program at Department of Commerce. So I wasn't talking to a receptionist. I was talking to somebody who's he was very clear. He says, that's a
Yeah.
policy decision. You
Okay.
don't have to allow it. And I said, and I told them how our density, we were saying 3 dwelling units per lot. So I just bring it up as,
Yeah,
I'd rather see it gone and think about it more later to see.
Yeah, because staff has already done their research, I lean towards leaving it as is. And then if you have a conversation with the Department of Commerce, I'm comfortable with you removing it, but I would rather leave it as is until you heard something directly.
I think as is, and you double check everything.
And we can revisit that.
If they say it needs to be changed, then we change it. But I have no problem with it because I think it's going to come anyway at some point. The left isn't talking to the right. They're 2
Yeah.
different bills. They didn't talk about everything. They're eventually going to make it happen anyway. So I say
Yeah.
leave it.
Yeah, by no means am I saying that you didn't have the conversation, I just don't know this person to know if he would say, I never had the conversation. So I want her to have the conversation direct before she was to
And you
strike
made it clear,
anything.
it's a policy.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a policy.
Yeah.
It's not like the 2 ADUs
Yeah,
for a single-family home.
And I guess if, from a, either way, it's 3 units is part of the thinking as well, so you're still limiting to that. I think you had a previous question about, so when it comes to whether you can detach or attach, you could theoretically have a principal unit and do 2 ADUs that are attached in the back, as long as, again, your total's 3. What we're looking at is the total 3. However they attach, detach, they could all be attached, they could all be detached, as long as they don't go over the principal unit and 2 ADUs. We're not, I think the idea is that we're not supposed to be so concerned with how they put those together.
yeah.
So they're limited to 1,000 square feet. They can be attached or detached. They have to be within the setbacks. They have to meet our maximum total structure coverage. They have to meet the new impervious surface. As long as they do that, they can sort of configure how they so desire.
Yeah. I'm getting into that. Skip the question.
Anything
All right.
else on that section?
Let's see, permanent foundations, can't be home occupation. No, that was, another point that came up in conversation was to clarify that ADUs are counted I know back in the day, before you were here, our definition for accessory dwelling unit called it an apartment, and it doesn't count in density. And so, and it is a policy decision according to the guidance I saw at Department of Commerce as to whether you do count ADUs, and they made a point of saying the model ordinance that they provide doesn't count ADUs. So since we're making a clear intent to say they count in density calculations, I'm suggesting adding something that says ADUs are counted in density calculations.
As we're no longer having a density calculation for neighborhood residential 1 or 2 when it comes to that, does it, I don't know.
Well, but you look at the rest of the table, I thought ADU or single-family homes were allowed through all the residential mixed use.
What is the problem that we're solving with this?
The resolving is to have the clarity that an ADU, it does count. It used to be that it didn't count when you did your density calculations. And
So-
guidance at Commerce says that's an important distinction. They make that distinction. The model ordinance we're showing you does not count ADUs.
So it's
So-
to educate our
so
long-term
it's-
people who may be thinking it's the way it used to be.
Yeah, or just to make that clarity, and maybe the lawyer says it's not needed, but it seems, it was just something that occurred to me in the overall process, because it is an optional thing as to whether you do count ADUs or not.
So 1 and 2 family dwelling units are allowed in NR1 and NR2, and they're allowed in the NC with conditions. And so accessory dwelling units are also limited to NR1, NR2, and neighborhood commercial with conditions.
I recommend we table that discussion as we're kind of in that last push on this. I think those are valid points, but I just get a little worried about time and the fact that we've got a deadline to push these through. And knowing this is a living document, I think it's valid to revisit that. So,
That was it for me on ADUs, thank you.
okay, great. Outdoor storage looks to be the next one.
So these are the sections that I've added for outdoor storage, outdoor sales, drive-through facilities. Again, they can be placeholders as we get, because right now we don't really have any standards, so I at least wanted to get some better standards. I don't know if there was any questions on those.
So are these items required for?
So these are all
the update?
accessory, the way the use table, these are all kind of accessory uses, so it adds some design criteria for those because we've, to try to help fine tune them. They're not, like I said, they were sort of tied to the fact that we've added them under the accessory use table to try to break down that, how they, where they're allowed, where they're not. The idea that outdoor storage is more in our manufacturing areas, outdoor sales would be more in our mixed-use retail areas, and then drive-through facilities.
Yeah. I'm probably going to contradict myself because I loved the other table as far as getting that in there so that we're protected now. Is this a valid, how much work would it be for us to table
To take
this
those out for
portion
now
of
and then
it and
review
table
them
for
next year?
January? Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of getting to it sooner than later, but I also don't like the idea of pushing through a lot of new content on the last month that we're approving this. How does the team feel?
Okay.
Okay. That, yeah, just because I saw it, saw a lot of red, went through it. I don't take exception to any of it, but I also just haven't really digested
No,
it.
it was just when we talked about it, I was like, if we're
Yeah.
throwing that in there, should we have something to structure around it? But we can include that all in our design review.
And that's the outdoor
Yeah,
storage.
So outdoors, because that's basically what they are, is they're kind of design criterias
Right.
for outdoor storage, outdoor sales, and drive-through.
So we're pulling that.
We're going to pull those.
Okay. So that moves us into animal shelters.
I misunderstood. It's not going to stay in this draft going forward to council?
Is that okay with everyone, that it gets scratched from this draft and gets
Oh.
moved to like a January? I mean, I'm okay with
Okay,
it
I'm
being
happy
urgent,
either
but I
way.
don't like the idea of,
That's good.
we
yeah.
haven't really digested it yet.
Agreed.
Okay, or had public comment and,
Oh, I'm fine either way. It was
Okay.
just, I was thinking
Okay.
placeholder concept, and we can come back and tune it up. So I just wanted to make sure I was
Yeah.
on the same page.
no, that's why I was like, I know I'm contradicting myself, because last time I loved the placeholder, and this time I'm like, I feel like we're pushing too many placeholders. So, okay.
Okay, so
Yeah.
consensus is to remove it for now, and we will bring
Yes.
it back next year when we're talking about various concepts of design.
I'm happy either way, but it needs
Okay.
to be, we need to have it in here. I appreciate the thinking ahead.
And I will say, we still have we did increase the site plan requirements, so there is still power in those new requirements that would address some of this. But yeah, that was my thinking. So now
Okay.
we're into off-street parking. So again, everything is
I have a
required, the ones that are dropped, other than the idea that, so on the page that starts with contractor yards and you're moving down, and again, when we go through this section, we will clean out a lot of these, review all of these, so at this point, we're just sort of dealing with what we have to do. The dwelling ADUs, the code does allow, which it's sort of, so the legislation says if it's, how does it work? If it's a
6,000.
lot greater than 6,000 square feet, you could require 2 spaces per unit. If it's less than 6,000 square feet, you can only allow 1 unit or 1 space per unit. Again, so the 1 space was a recommendation from Framework. When we went back through, we didn't clarify that. So, and then I highlighted under multifamily dwelling and 2-family dwelling, those should be, those are footnote. So I need to fix those on just I'm blinking, whatever you make them small on top. So the question was raised via email earlier. Do we want to strictly, if we're going strictly with state law for this round, it should actually be 2 spaces per accessory dwelling unit unless the lot is less than 6,000 square feet, and then it would be 1. So if we want to go with, if the consensus is to go with state law, I will fix that before it goes to council.
okay. Yes, Commissioner Whalen.
I'm happy with making the change to align with state law with the 6,000 square foot lot size threshold. The suggestion is to actually do something more than footnotes. To actually, I think we do that in a few other cases where we say if it's a church of a certain size or a hardware store of a certain size, this is the rule, vice versa. I would just suggest, instead of the footnotes, which I missed entirely, hence the email, that the entry ADU subdivide into the 6,000 square foot lot threshold.
Yeah,
one
and that,
or 2
okay.
parking spots. It's just my suggestion.
That sounds okay with me.
So I will fix the language to reflect state legislation and nothing more.
Sounds, Commissioner, or sorry, Vice Chair Oler.
I have a question on B. It says where compliance where tree retention and parking requirements would make a proposed residential development or redevelopment infeasible. I'm struggling a little bit with the wording. Does that actually mean where simply tree retention, where complying with tree retention requirements would make parking infeasible?
Yeah, I thought I was there. Where am I?
Where are we at?
I'm sorry.
1748-010.
1748-010B.
Oh, there I am. Sorry. Yes, that's actually out of state legislation. So So basically, if we say, which we don't really have a great tree retention, but like if our tree retention said you have to keep 30% of your significant trees, and they can't do that and meet the parking requirements, then we would allow them to have less parking because we're requiring them to keep trees.
Okay.
Ours sort of says it doesn't really say, it says you have to replace significant trees. It doesn't really say you have to keep them. So as currently written, I don't know how much that would directly apply. It may as we revise the landscaping.
Okay. Thanks.
Could I?
Yes, Commissioner Whalen.
And thank you for bringing that up. That was a good catch. 1748.030, paragraph, let's see, I thought there was something here about tree retention as well. Did I just get confused?
Yeah, because I have 030, but I don't have any changes to it.
And so no need to make a change, it's just being entered again, the idea of tree retention. I might well be confusing it with something else I ran through, so never mind. Excuse me. I don't see it now.
Okay, so we left it, I know that 2 were for changing it to, as far as parking standards, to the state required and no more.
And yes, and maybe
Okay.
put it as a actual section, not just a footnote.
Okay, is that
I can
okay
figure
with?
out where that fits.
Okay. Commissioner Johnson, Vice Chair Oler, I hadn't heard from you guys, but just head nod, yes, no, that, okay.
That's the half mile of major transit stop thing to parking places that we're talking about for the ADUs. Yeah, you know, and actually I'm trying to look for what the definition of half mile of a major transit stop, and I'm looking at the RCW, and it just says again, areas within 1/2 mile of a major transit stop that are zoned to have an average minimum density of 15 dwelling units. Does that mean only those within 1/2 mile of Meridian or 99?
I don't believe we currently have anything that meets the definition of a major transit stop.
Okay.
Because
Those more
I
like
looked
the
that
transit
up.
centers,
and-
not the transit.
So it's not just a bus stop, it has to be
Major transit
major,
stop.
and there is a definition that the state has, and I thought I put it in
I
here.
popped up RCW 43.21C.420, and literally I'm just reading from it, and it doesn't really say that much about it besides zone to have an average minimum density of 15 dwelling units or more per gross acre within 1/2 mile of a major transit stop. Again, maybe I'm missing where the major transit stop is actually defined. Oh, wait, here we go. A stop on a high-capacity transportation service, commuter rail stops, stops on rail or fixed guideway systems, and stops on bus rapid transit routes.
Which we don't have any.
Right.
So
Stops
it is
for
in the
bus or other
definition
transit mode.
under transit stop major. Sorry.
Of at least 30 minutes during the peak hours of operation. So we don't have those.
No, there's only like, I think, 2 or 3 in the Pierce County system right now.
Oh,
So right now, we don't. There's always a chance that someday Meridian could, and in that case, we would have to, but at this point in time, we don't have any that meet these qualifications. And we're not going to have, at this point, there's no, even if Sound Transit comes through, there's not a stop in Milton. If they change that, then yes, that would apply. But currently, we don't have major transit stops.
Okay. I'm good.
All right, so then the rest, if we're good with that, the sign code is just changing to the new zoning. I double checked because there was some weird cut and pasting that had happened, so I think I fixed all of that. And I think that, and then under non-conforming buildings, I did add, again, changing the name to land use administrator. And then I did say, legally non-conforming 1 and 2 family. I was trying to add the duplexes in, that they would have to follow the same rules.
Okay.
So probably shouldn't say detached, but 1 and 2 family, there's a, however we say it in the other direction, I'll fix that.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Moving into, so the rest of it was attachment 3 that was talking about the reasoning behind. the 60, so we decided to proceed with 75 there. So I think that,
We just run through the list of amendments before we make, the list of amendments before we make the motion?
yeah, do you feel comfortable running through that list for us, or would staff?
Oh, I put them all through here. I didn't.
I know, that's where
didn't
it's
do
like we
one master list.
we didn't flag them.
Okay.
All right,
see what I got.
so flipping through,
Accessory structure larger than a principal will add square footage and make it a conditional use. We are making a footnote for standard net density NR2 that references that's if you have the conditional use permit.
okay,
We are adding a, back up. We're adding a footnote to the use table that references 1744016 for prohibited uses.
okay,
We are keeping it at 75 for the lot width. We're going to add some sort of language that clarifies it's, and it could be that maybe we just add the definition for maximum structure coverage, that it's the total of all structures.
okay,
We are leaving in maximum impervious surface coverage. We are leaving in build to line. We're adding the word minimum to perimeter landscaping and adding the TC for town center mixed use. We're adding a building envelope definition.
okay.
Mine may not be in order someday. I probably should go to the 3-ring binder thing. Yep. So there's a couple notes for what I'm doing next year. Fixing the home occupation under the ADUs to basically say that one unit is allowed to receive customers.
Okay,
We're taking out outdoor storage, outdoor sales, and drive-through facilities for now. Let's see, that's good. We are fixing the footnote citations, and we are correcting ADU dwellings so that it's 2 spaces per accessory dwelling unit with the, again, footnote that if it's less than 6,000 square feet, that it only requires 1. Anything that I missed saying out loud?
I think you got it.
that is awesome. And then like we're at probably a good 70 pages or something. And
What?
Oh, I think that was an awesome summary as far as a lot to cover, and I think you did it. Okay, so any last comments before discussion, or may I have a motion? Yes.
Just last comment would be, look forward to how we're going to fine tune this and review the package while it's really more anchored in our understanding, build forward in the future and really continue with updating our zoning code. It's,
Great.
thanks for all the hard work and thinking.
Thank you. No motions?
I don't have the motion in front of me.
6C.
Okay, okay.
She's like, I'm tired of talking.
No, it's in here right now, and
Well,
I
I
can't
suppose
find
I
it.
could make
All
the
right.
motion.
Okay,
You keep
thank you
making
very much.
motions.
Yeah.
Everybody smile. Okay. I move to recommend to the City Council the draft changes to Title 17 zoning and the Milton zoning map as presented and discussed with the presented recommendations for change,
Perfect.
amendment,
That was my
changes.
discussion, because I figured there'd be
Yeah,
stuff to add.
okay.
Okay.
So seconded.
This my page? No,
That's my page.
okay.
All right, so we have a motion to move to recommend to City Council the draft changes to Title 17 zoning and Milton zoning map as presented and discussed with the revisions presented tonight. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
They missed a fun time.
All right. Can I just say, oh, one thing put to bed.
Yes.
We can close out the year here
And
soon,
before you
guys.
leave, come get your red envelope from me.
One last agenda
One
item.
last agenda item.
I make a motion.
Go for it.
I'm going to usurp right here. I would like to make a motion to hold this off until the election, off till January, when everyone is here.
That makes sense to me.
Agreed.
Okay,
Cool.
great. That we will table elections to January. That takes care of our regular agenda. On to staff reports.
I do have a couple real quick. The parade is on the 23rd. I don't think anyone from Planning Commission said they wanted to be involved, but if anyone wants to, we can decorate a car real quick and throw you in. If there's anything with the TVs, like a change of seating or something, let me know. We're just starting to learn how to use them. I know they all left, but I appreciate people coming and talking. We have started our PRC and state reviews, so they're, as those come in, we will either, some of those we will present to council because they can add those if we need to, or some of those will probably be delayed until next year's update, depending on how those come in, because PSRC, they won't even get to it. They have a few suggestions that are coming back, but they won't certify until the next year. So, and then one last thing. So this Sound Transit Tacoma Dome link that we're all sort of aware of, I believe the end of this week, they are officially coming out with their environmental impact statement for the public to review and comment. So for those of you who love that stuff, we would encourage you, we will have hard copies that I think we can loan out. I can't until it's officially released, but we do have hard copies, and it'll, obviously we have digital copies. So just wanted to get that out as well.
They don't listen.
And I did not get a building official, so we're back. He decided to not take the job, so I'm back recruiting,
We scare them off, don't
I guess. So I'm done.
On to commissioner reports, starting with Vice Chair Oler.
Oh,
Anything to report?
yeah. It's been a long night. Yeah, it was nice to see a lot of public involvement for once, but that's probably because, again, people are heard that something is happening and they're anxious. So the more that we can do to make our work transparent, we try to do that on YouTube, but I really feel sometimes that people are afraid that bad things are happening when it's not really the case, and that's kind of disconcerting. I live in Milton. I love Milton. My daughter's the 4th generation of our family to live in Milton. I certainly want Milton to be a nice place. I'm not a developer. I'm a resident, so feeling this sort of like mistrust is sometimes disheartening when these meetings are open and everyone's always welcome to come. And we wish people would come. Anyway.
Or watch it.
Yeah. But it's good to hear from people because it's silence until somebody has high anxiety and then it's like, oh my God, what are you people doing?
Yeah.
Come on over, talk to us. That's what I got.
All right, great. Commissioner Whalen.
Wishing you all happy holidays as we celebrate the season of light. And I too was glad to see the citizens come out. I think it's hard for people to be aware of what's happening and to understand the nature of what is happening. And when they don't understand the nature of it and hear about it very suddenly, it causes concern, and I'm just glad that their input was persuasive in affecting the commission recommendation. And that's it. Thank you.
Great. Commissioner Johnson.
Well, the Grinch will be here with the kids tomorrow, and the Grinch may be on the Christmas parade with Santa, but it's been an interesting, long evening. Yes, I do like when the public comes, but what's interesting, we very rarely get them when something good is happening. So sometimes, and again, I'm a stickler, there's information that people can find from themselves rather than people going door to door and watch it on the camera, watch it on YouTube, read the minutes. And I'm come from a background, there's no excuse. If you hear something, you double check it. And we are honest, we've worked hard, the staff has worked hard. The city's come a long way with transparency, and I am offended when people say we're not transparent, because I was under another administration that was not, and we've seen other cities that are not, and this commission is transparent. We've all worked very hard, and we have a lot of knowledge, and Commissioner Whalen, who has a lot of history, but things change, and the state is making us change, and people have to recognize that. It is the state. If you got a problem, you got to hit the state first before it comes to us. And that's, but Merry Christmas to everybody, Hanukkah, whatever you're celebrating. And I've enjoyed this year. I think our system has worked very well this year. And Chair Ellis, I appreciate the way you've run it. And so it's been good. And our staff, I'll pick on her later. And I'm sorry you can't get a building permit person. We need one. Come on out there. Somebody that came in have to have one. That's it. Bye.
We'll get you certified.
You can see I'm ready to go.
I just want to say, as far as closing out the year, I'm really proud of the work we did. This was a huge feat. I can't imagine how many pieces of paper we printed those poor trees. So I am just really excited about the year we had, about the work we did. I know we have a lot of differing views, a lot of differing backgrounds, but that is what brings this group together. And I think that's where we're able to come together and figure out what's the middle ground, what's attainable for everybody, and where we can compromise. And I've seen it on all ends that everyone here has had to compromise something. But I think it's for all of the greater good. So I just want to say thank you all for participating in the process, continuing it on, and let's see if we can get more people next year.
And the TVs are great.
The TVs are awesome, the Christmas decorations are awesome, and the wayfinding signs, I'm just very happy with some of this progress we've seen in this year. So with that, 8:58, shy of 9 o'clock. All right, adjourned.